First item on the agenda is a discussion item, minor site plan review for 264 Corderville Road. Do you want to bring us up to date, Karina?
Okay, if you recall at the February 12th meeting for minor site plan application for 264 Corderville Road. Can you hear me? Oh, okay. We had reviewed the conditions of the draft decision and made some discussions, and at that time, the meeting was continued, after which Peter Bemis supplied a revised submission number 3 with some options. One being that instead of a fence along Woodland Road, there'd be red cedar trees at a higher density along that portion where the access driveway to Woodland would be closing. And then there were still several concerns from abutters, and the planning board had some concerns about the activity at the site. And we were continued to this evening because there was a question about deliveries to the site during business hours, and that they weren't supposed to be happening according to the draft decision unless the business was during operating hours. And then there was a question of, well, if someone delivers at night or has an accident at night and they need to deliver to the site. So Mr. Bemis was going to go back to the owner to discuss that with him. In the interim, I just want to point out that we received several emails from Nancy Falcone, 257 Corderville, identifying some concerns related to what was going on at the site. We also received email from Laura Engel at 198 Woodland on March 7th, also describing some concerns they had. Then we received some answers to some questions to the building permit as from the building commissioner in regards to, what activities are allowed on the site and the current zoning status, permit status. Then we also received comment from the building commissioner today regarding his preference for a fence along Woodland Road as opposed to the trees. And that brings us to tonight. We do have an extension request that was granted at the last meeting that takes us through March 15th, the end of this week. So if the planning board doesn't close on this, we do have another extension request prepared to the April 1st meeting.
Good evening, Mr. Bemis. Welcome. Okay.
There's a copy of the same issues on the back page, so it's just the front and the back. The back is just an excerpt from the site plan. So good evening, Peter Bemis, Engineering Design Consultants. So on behalf of P&H Management, I did go back to them because I feel like we've come a long way with a site that really doesn't have any restrictions on hours of operation. And as part of the site plan review proceedings, we were looking to try to get some guardrails up for this site. Karina outlined the physical things that we're going to change at the site: lighting, landscaping, where cars are parked, how they're parked, and what those cars represent. When it came to hours of operation, I had been saying Monday through Friday from 9 to 6. We did make that from 8 to 6. The repair component of the business is what really is the focus of the current tenant that is there versus the automobile vehicle sales. The Saturday hours would be 8 to 4 and Sundays closed for business. So that's the only edit to hours of operation is the change from 9 to 8. And then for vehicles that are for sale, they can only be delivered during the operating hours of the facility. Registered vehicles, and I'm emphasizing registered because that would imply that cars that are for sale or unregistered would be coming only during the hours of operation. But a vehicle that's for repair as a result of a breakdown or an emergency may be delivered from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. and that no vehicles would be delivered outside of these hours. That at least gives them the ability to address some of their clients' concerns. Obviously, if someone breaks down overnight, then they'll have to make other arrangements, move the car again at another time. But it just gives them a bit of a window that's kind of normal during normal business hours for people who may be traveling home, their car breaks down, it can go there. We believe that by imposing these additional restrictions on the site, that we've now properly positioned this. And some of these things that we've accomplished are outside of the ZBA's conditional approval that they had granted. They asked you to look at certain things rather than itemize those again, because I've gone through them at other meetings. Some of these things go outside of that zone. The site has been there since the 40s. I didn't realize it actually went back, it could potentially go back to 42 is kind of what I've seen. So we've got like 72 years of a building being there that didn't really have a lot of restrictions on it. And now we're putting on some significant restrictions. There were some emails going about connecting the prior tenant to the current tenant. I believe there is a relationship between the prior tenant and the current tenant. I think the prior tenant was mostly a car dealership. They were selling cars. The current tenant is more of a repair facility, but will sell cars when he gets permission to sell cars. No cars are being sold there today. There are none that I am aware of that are for sale. They apparently found something online, some neighbors showing a car that's for sale at another facility. They have a facility, I believe, down on the Cape, the prior tenant. That's where they moved to. Unfortunately, because again, I think their concern was that they didn't believe the select board was going to give them the ability to segue into this period with the planning board. So that's why they left abruptly, very abruptly, like in one night. They were there one day and they were gone that night. So unfortunately, the owner then had to find someone else to occupy the building. And it ended up being someone who had some affiliation with the prior tenant. And that's really all it is that there's a relationship between the two. And I believe he does the repair work for the cars that the previous tenant was selling. And he's repairing those cars at the site. And apparently not all the cars there are from that other tenant, but there are some. I will acknowledge that there are some. So with that said, I believe we've got a complete site plan before you. We have established hours of operation, and we're restricting the time periods with which cars can be delivered either for sale or for repair. And I hope that we've got this positioned properly so you can approve it. Thank you.
So Peter, you're contending there's no sales happening there now?
There's no license. They're not a licensed dealer.
I certainly understand that.
So
But
until
so I drove by there today and there are cars there with Carfax authorized dealer stickers on them. One of them has sold written across the windshield.
came here with those stickers on it from the other site. That's what I'm saying to you. It's a relationship between the two of them, but there's nothing actively bringing a customer there to purchase a vehicle. I don't think anybody's walking around there looking at cars. They happen to be parked on site because they were there to be repaired. So, that's what I'm saying. We're kind of caught in between this condition where we've got a site that exists. It's been there for 72 years, operating in some form of maybe not car sales, or maybe they did sell cars back in the day. I don't know. But clearly in the 80s, there were 2 cars available for sale, because I think that the ZBA permit did go back and memorialize that. In 2015, there was an effort to clean up that site. A site plan was approved. The select board at that time granted an approval, whether they should have or they shouldn't have, they did. They gave them a license to sell 8 automobiles there. So there's been an operation going on, at least consistently selling cars and repairing cars since the 80s, for sure. Prior to that, there was definitely a gas station there because there used to be fuel tanks there. So it's a business that has evolved, predates zoning, and we're trying to put some restrictions on that site that don't exist today. And I think they're good restrictions, and they're within a reasonable set of parameters that a business can operate under. The select board could grant a license for sale of cars. The zoning board already saw the wisdom in trying to bring a site more into compliance. and put the conditions on us to come to you. And you folks have then come forward and pushed back when you could on these things, to the extent we could agree to them. Would I like to pick the building up and put it someplace else? Sure, it would be great, but unfortunately it's there. And we're trying to make good with what I think is somewhat of a bad situation, because it's not really an ideal fit. But this is a much better fit than's been there. I used to live up the street, so I went by it every single day. Now I just drive by it to get to work, but it was very much an integral part of where my backyard was. And I used to go there to get my car repaired and get gas. I mean, I've been here that long. So it's just, it's a different site. It's gone through peaks and valleys with its use. There happens to be probably what some of the neighbors might see as a peak period now, because there's a lot of cars there. But the guy's repairing them. That's his business. So I have been not told that anything illegal has gone on there by selling a car, because they don't have a license to do so. So I've had no reports of that. And I don't think anyone can connect dots and say that because there's a Carfax on it or there's a sold sign on it, that somehow that happened at that site. The car came there to be fixed. The car will leave there to go to a site to be sold. That's it.
So you're saying a car is sold and then brought there to be fixed?
I believe a car has been sold, if there's a sticker on it that says sold, or the car was purchased by the other dealership to be sold again, but it needs to be repaired. That's all I'm just saying to you, is that there's no car sales happening at that site today.
Yeah,
We're not approved to do so.
I understand that. I'm just not confident that there's seems to be any adherence to any rules.
But there, I get it, but there isn't any rule to be followed at the moment. It's a repair, it's a car, it's an automobile, it's a former gas station that's been a repair facility, and it's in a continuous operation, and it's doing that. That's what they're doing there, nothing more. They happen to have some cars with some stickers in the windows. Sorry.
Mr. Stein,
Thanks. So Peter, the way this letter looks to me, the new tenant could take delivery for vehicles in need of repair on Sundays between 7 and 10 p.m.
No, sir.
Well, I have a hard time with the way this letter's, it doesn't state except Sundays.
All right. I didn't, that wasn't intended. That wasn't intended. They're closed for business on Sundays. So I can pull that down. If that was your only
Well-
concern, I can pull that down. That was not intended.
I think ultimately in the order of conditions, we're going to word it. I mean, Karina, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way we word it in the order of the conditions is what matters, right?
Yes. It
Well,
will
it's
be
gonna give them more
specifically
like site
written.
Plan too. I mean, whatever that, your decision and our site plan need to say the same thing.
But I do see that it doesn't reference, it just says, emergency, registered vehicles for repair as a result of breakdown or emergency may be delivered 7 AM to 10 PM. No vehicle deliveries outside of these hours are permitted. It doesn't reference what these hours are. It doesn't say that that's excluding Sunday. Is this Monday to Friday? Is it Monday to Saturday? I think that's what Jesse's
Yeah,
saying.
the intent was that it was the Monday through Saturday. That they're closed on Sundays.
Well, I mean, this, again, I understand that right now the restrictions aren't in place. The reason the abutters concerns are important to me is it suggests that the behavior will continue after we've gone through this process. So in spite of whatever restrictions we apply. So that's why we're being really, meticulous in terms of the order of conditions. And
I
of
wouldn't
course,
disagree.
we do have, I know this is true of the major site plan, but Karina, on a minor site plan, if we find that the agreements are being breached, within 1 year, this can be brought back before us for review. Am I correct?
I think that you can put any condition in that you want within reason. So say.
No, I know, but if we get complaints from the neighbors that these conditions are not being adhered to over the next few months, this will be brought back before us, if I'm not mistaken.
If it's required, yeah, if it's, it would have to go in the conditions, but also, I think with code
Okay.
enforcement, our code enforcement officer would need to step in, as well, but you could condition, I think you could condition, I'd have to check it with town council, but that you can say if there are such and such complaints, you can revisit it. We do that with lighting. So if, if there, the planning board has a right to revisit from 1 year construction is completed, or the site plan, approval conditions are met, they have a year to review, and if not, you could be asked to come back in.
I
Okay,
would say
thank
it's
you.
no different as any decision that you make. It's enforceable through your zoning enforcement officer.
Yeah, the difference is that it's not tied to a certificate of occupancy directly through a site plan. It's more exterior site work, so there's an existing certificate of occupancy. And in in other decisions, we have the latitude to tie it to a certificate of occupancy through the code, 174-10J, that says you need to be in compliance of all the site plan requirements prior to certificate of occupancy, so that's where it's a little different.
Anything else, Mr. Stein?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Houlihan?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Bemis. Again, I just echo my fellow board members, just having we don't have the enforcement per se on what the occupancy and what they're allowed to do, but it is very frustrating to see the abutters send notes in that make it appear like they're selling cars. And I understand what you're saying. It's just, it puts us in a difficult predicament. Relative to my questions, I think the letter makes sense. I think the two things that Mr. Burlingame brought up were the screen. So I know we discussed last time the trees, and he's saying the trees probably would not be sufficient, and that we should probably go back to the fence. I'm supportive either way, but I think we have to make a decision for that. The second is that, his concern that our bylaw really doesn't have any teeth for code. And so given that, is there a way from a conditions perspective that the code enforcement officer has an opportunity within that year? I know we just talked about that we could revisit, that there's either some sort of ability for the code enforcement officer to act on the minor site plan approval versus through our code, because it basically, his point to the planning board was that the current zoning really, there's no teeth, and it looks like it hasn't, with prior code enforcement officers, hasn't been enforced. And we don't want to put something in place that is unable to be enforced, because I think that's where we sit. So I just don't know where our jurisdiction is with providing some sort of teeth where he has ability to actually provide some.
So I think at one of the prior meetings, there was discussion about tying it to the car sales license, the class 2 license that the select board would be issuing for them to sell cars. So right now, there's no license to sell cars there at all, because it goes with the business, and the last tenant vacated. So once they have site plan approval, they need to go to get the class 2 license, but the zoning board said no more than 12 is what they're recommending. And the planning board in their site plan, even though we don't approve what spaces are for car sales, the spaces are designated 12 spaces. But I think that perhaps you could tie it to that may, and we'd have to check with town council, if they don't do X, Y, Z, or if X, Y, Z happens, then they lose and you can't tell another board what to do, but perhaps they need to revisit their class two. I just don't know how to tie it to that, but that would be the only strong enforcement avenue, because it's tough to revoke a site plan. It can lapse if they don't act on it, but the enforcement part, I mean,
We've worked hard to get the 12 bars, so I mean, I certainly don't see that being a problem, that the select board puts that condition on there that, you'll maintain compliance with this site, so that we've memorialized the ZBA decision through your board, and then they can memorialize your board's decision through the license. So I think that's certainly a good path to finishing this off.
my only concern is that there was a 2015 site plan, which I wasn't here then, but I believe there are conditions that weren't met for that. There were landscaping items that were required to be replaced if they're not.
Yeah, but this plan fixes it.
I know, but that's like kicking, I'm just saying that the intent is that that site plan was supposed to be completed. And we've run into this with other applicants where it gets kicked down the road and then they want to handle it all at once without. So that's another consideration that, what is the history and how has the site owner performed in meeting the obligations of the permit that he did have already. So it's a tricky one. We can condition it as best as we can.
I guess as long as we condition for the site plan and we put forward a recommendation to the select board to at least consider memorializing our conditions through the license of the sales. Obviously, it doesn't necessarily have teeth unless they condition the class 2 license, but we can at least put recommendation into them and just enforce what we can through our 1 year.
Yeah, it's also difficult to condition, like if you said, you give them the planning board has 1 year to ask the applicant, the owner, to come back based on what? If you say, if there were other complaints, likely there will be more complaints and it will trigger that, and then we'll just be in the same boat. So best would be to mitigate where the abutters and the property owner are in agreement with the terms, and then the property owner live up to it, but that's the problem.
Right.
So it's a tough one, so.
So those are my only 2 comments.
Mr. Maria.
Hi, Peter. So I think this is regulated under our regulation, chapter 130, noise, because the kind of information that we're receiving from the neighbors is that their quality of life is degraded. So just to step back, there was a noise bylaw committee maybe a couple of years ago that was formed, and we've had now this noise bylaw. I think it was approved a couple of town meetings ago. The premise, just want to read this, the citizens of Southborough have a right to and should be ensured an environment free from excessive noise. The bylaw is enacted to minimize excessive noise, which may jeopardize their health and welfare, quality of life. There is in 130-4 under prohibited activities, there happens to be truck loading and unloading trucks. And maybe it was not intended exactly this, but I would imagine a truck that's unloading a car falls under 130-4. Noise that is audible beyond the property line while loading or unloading trucks between the hours of 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. is prohibited unless it's permitted. And there's fines associated with that. So at a minimum, I think we have to change that 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. to align with this. And I believe this would be applicable. Maybe it wasn't written that way. It might be, trucks, Coca-Cola trucks or something. But if you're unloading vehicles, you're unloading a truck. And so I think we have at least have to make that 7 to 9 p.m. And I do agree also that those hours need to be, is it Monday through, what are the hours Monday through Friday? What is it? 8 to 6, and but the deliveries would be until 9 PM. Okay, and then Saturday is 8 to 4, but deliveries till 9 PM and starting up again 7 AM and then nothing on. So I think we have to at least align, I mean, all of our decisions say that the plan has to be in accordance with our applicable laws and regulations. And so it says 9 to 7 or 9 PM to 7 AM with this is interesting. So the zoning enforcement officer should know, although I would imagine that the police get called. But there is a fine of $50 for the first offense or 50 for the second, and then, 100 for the third. And so, I mean, I think this is applicable. I also think that it's not zoning. Well, I think that when we say that it has to be applicable with all laws and regulations, that we should at least align, this is what the residents have to do. This
Right, my
really
point is
resident-
just that the building commissioner is not the enforcement of that because it's not zoning.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I know, I totally agree. That's maybe why this was written for, that I think the police would be the enforcement. But just looking through our noise bylaw, it's quite restricted as to what a neighbor can do. I think we go 8 to 2 on Saturday. And so, I'm even inclined to say truck can't deliver after those hours on Saturday. I mean, we should, if we're requiring neighbors to turn off their, leaf blowers or whatever, we shouldn't allow, big trucks to come into residential neighborhood and, violate the neighbor's rights. I also think that this is a Board of Health issue. This is bordering on a Board of Health issue. I think that there's enough neighbors who have come forward that have, really express deeply their concerns. And I think at least I am really also deeply concerned. This is the type of stuff that impacts health. And I feel that the Board of Health should be involved. That maybe there's a consultation or maybe they review complaints or something. I don't really know, but I feel from the neighbors that, this has been a problematic site. I agree, Peter, I understand you're trying to get it back into, or into compliance. And, but there's now a distrust, and the neighbors are going to be on call, basically taking pictures and don't know who to contact. And I guess they're going to have to go to the police. So because it's not zoning. So, I feel strongly that this is becoming a Board of Health, issue. I don't know whether they would take it up, because it's up to them, but I think that this is a public health problem and should be addressed by the Board of Health. Thanks.
Ms. Brush.
Thank you. Peter, thank you. I think you're in a real tough spot here. And I do appreciate the job you're trying to do. I will tell you, I'm very frustrated, and I'm frustrated on behalf of the neighbors that they're spending their quality time that should be with their families policing a site that's in a residential neighborhood. And I know it's been there for going back to the 40s or whatnot, but I think the site itself needs to be a better neighbor to the neighbors on the site. I mean, it's tough. I've lived in a construction zone where there were conditions and there were rules and they weren't followed. And what that does to a family is every time they see a flashing light go by, they're going to look out the window and they're going to see if there's something going on the site. And that's just, again, on what Debbie and Marnie have talked about, the distrust. It's about having a business in a residential neighborhood. I know it's on 85. I had a business next to me in my neighborhood at one point in time, and the garbage truck used to come at 4:30 in the morning and bang, which was before the noise bylaw, which was why I was so supportive of it. But I think that kind of going on Mimi's points as well, the vehicles that are sitting there, I understand they're owned by our RNZD. I actually went and looked at their website on the Cape, and none of the cars that we have pictures of are listed on their website. Even the one that says sold isn't listed. And all the pictures on the website are from the Cape. There's none of these cars are photographs of these cars are being listed for sale. I think there's a big gray area here in being able to say, well, you know, we're doing maintenance on these cars. We're bringing them all up. They all have Carfaxes in the window. Clearly they were bought or being ready to be sold. I find it hard to believe that every single one of them is up here. So I have no assurances that the cars that are sitting on this site, once they get their, license from the select board and a site plan from us, the next day you're not going to see for sale signs in every one of those cars. So I worry too that there's storage of cars being done, which I don't believe is an allowed use. Again, I'm new to the zoning thing here. I don't believe storing of cars is an allowed use either. And I worry that that's what's taking place as well. So that's another concern that I have. Let's see. I think I worry that having separate hours for sales, I guess, let me ask you this. The hours that are listed Monday through Friday and Saturday 8 to 4, those are for both sales and maintenance. So the last time we were here, there was people doing maintenance on cars at 10 o'clock at night. So again, I'm asking my fellow board members because this is new to me. How do we stop that from happening?
Well, according to the building commissioner, the site plan is for the site. So if we condition hours of business, those are the hours of business for the site.
Okay. Thank you.
So those would be the hours that they would be open to the public.
So then, well, open to the public is one thing, Peter. I'm saying
So
if they're there till 10 o'clock at night, still repairing cars in a residential neighborhood, I have a huge concern about that. And, you know, we're being asked to do waivers, which helps increase the ability to have 12 cars there. But we don't have any assurances that what we're being told taking place is going to take place. So I'm kind of in a quandary on this one,
That's
Peter.
the point of the 12 cars for sale. So I think what it really comes down to is that we either see the wisdom that the zoning board had, because I think that's what it comes down to. In their eyes, they thought it was best to give the property owner the ability to sell cars here, thinking that's a higher and better use. So there'd be more of that activity. And that tenant really wanted to do that. Unfortunately, there was that gap moment where they got concerned and left. The person that's there now is more interested in repairs than they are in the sale of cars, but the owner doesn't want to lose the ability to have those cars for sale. If we don't come forward with an approved site plan and we don't go back to the Board of Select Board before September 16th, I think is the date, then we'd have to go back to the zoning board again.
Yep.
So if we don't believe that it's best to do the 12 cars for sale, then you don't have to approve the site plan. They can probably go back and try to do something with the 8 units they got in 2015, because I think that's what they'll probably do, is litigate that point, because it was done in an active manner that they relied on decisions that were made, be they right, wrong, or indifferent, versus falling back to the 2 cars for sale. It goes back to the 80s. So we have to just come to terms with what is the best scenario here. And that's why I call it guardrails. We're trying to put up guardrails to fit this site within. There are no guardrails today, and yet you're still holding that current tenant to some responsibility to those guardrails that we've been talking about. But they're not responsible for it today. So it's difficult for me to go down there and say to the guy, look, you have to do this because I'm trying to put it forward with the board, when he doesn't even, that's not even part of his lease arrangement. So it's difficult. I've come here in good faith to try to put forward what I think is the best plan for this site. It's been difficult. I've wanted to get up and go home. And maybe this is another one of those moments that I want to get up and go home.
Well, Peter, I'm sorry, I don't,
No, but it's okay, but I'm
You know-
gonna try to just bring it down to what is where we go from here is either we get nothing and it continues to be a garage, and, you know, Case will do what he can with his enforcement abilities to this non-conforming site. And that's where we are, and we don't change anything. And I do suspect that they'll try to go back and do something with the 2015 site plan first before they go back past that. or we go forward with what we've got. And I realize you did grant some waivers, but they've got to commit a lot of resources to this site. And it's a site that they don't have, it doesn't make a lot of money. So they're going to have to invest quite a bit of dollars because there's a lot to do the things that we're proposing right now. And the tenant's not going to end up doing them. It's going to have to be the property owner. So you folks have to make that decision. I'm sorry, I only have so much leeway with what I've done. Deb's point about the hours, that noise ordinance, I certainly wasn't trying to skirt anything. I was trying to pick a time that said, because I even thought 11 o'clock may be acceptable when I was first doing this, because if there was a garage, perfect example, and I don't mean to say Ted's Towing out loud for any other reason other than that it used to be down the street here, as we all knew, who have lived here that long.
Yep.
And they would have to go up and down Park, because that's where their facility was, right in the heart of the downtown area. So towing is a necessary component to repair. And I got the owner to come this far. And I have no problem going to the 9 because I don't think it makes sense to not dovetail it with the noise ordinance. I do believe there would have to be some measurements or whatever. I'd rather just say, we'll agree to that. It makes more sense that we just comply.
I mean, Peter, I'm not trying to belittle your efforts in any way. I'm just
I'm
trying to
taking it
find a
personally.
balance
I'm trying to,
between
I said that in
the,
my letter, it's a balance.
no, I know,
It's been a balance all along.
and it's a struggle and it is. And I'm trying to find a way. And again, I'm one of 5. I'm one of 5. And if I
I
don't,
know I only need 3, and I've been trying to find the 3. I do the math every time I get in front of the board.
yeah, I'm just, again, I'm trying to be cognizant of the issues that have transpired all along, Peter. I'm
Sure.
trying to recognize the neighbors continually police and they're continually come to these meetings. And I just want to make sure that what we do
Mhm.
is what's right for everybody. I mean, it's been a business there for a long time. We're all well aware that nobody's trying to stop that from happening. We're just trying to find the right balance of making it work for everybody.
Right.
That's
Which
all.
is what I've said to the folks is that I hate to think we've come this far and then you get nothing out
Yep.
of it and you just have to continue to deal with what's there.
Agreed.
And in all likelihood, they push the envelope as hard as they can. Whereas I believe what we've tried to do here is literally put up some guardrails and they have to operate within them. So you have to make that decision ultimately. I've tried to do my best to get us to a place that is
You have.
approvable, but that I can only do so much.
All right, Peter, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Mimi, I'm all set.
So the original conditions were Monday through Friday, 9 to 6. And so we're 8 to 6.
I'm just the guy is, they're there earlier and I know you, so I was viewing it that the business is open to the public during these hours. And if you're going to say that no one can open that door until, 8 a.m., because what they do behind that closed door, if you do that to every business in Southborough, they'll have no more businesses in Southborough. No one will come to town if they can't go in their building until the time they're supposed to open. Oh, I'm sorry. I tried to stop my watch. It's my grandson. I'm trying to FaceTime.
Oh, sure. Try and soften us up with a cute kid on the watch.
I was trying to stop. the watch.
Yeah, you'll do anything. Pete.
No,
I
no,
get
no,
it.
I don't need any sympathy vote here. So if that's indeed what would happen with this, I'm concerned. Because, I suspect that his employees will get there earlier than that. They'll be behind that closed door. And what they do behind the closed door, I don't think should be a concern. But that the public cannot go there. These are the public operating hours. That's when you can go in and conduct business. So, if they stayed after those hours, they shouldn't be making any noise that would interfere with the neighborhood either.
So let me just,
But that's.
so I understand. Are you saying that the difference between the hours that we had in our conditions and these hours is that what was in the conditions were the hours of business being conducted and these are the hours that anyone will be on the property?
No, I'm saying too that I heard that this evening. What I'm getting at is that the car sales they gave me those hours. When I started this, RNZD was the applicant, or
Yeah.
was the tenant. And they had told me, you know, that their families, they were gonna start their business day, they were gonna end their business day. That's where those hours came from. When that tenant left, I had said to them today, I said, look, we have to decide what you're gonna do about these hours. Because, you know, this has to fit better with what the tenant is using that you have there today. So he just said, no, 8 o'clock was fine in the morning. So I made Monday through Friday, 8 to start, the 6 stayed the same. Saturday, I kept the closed date at the time, but the 8 o'clock was changed on that date. We kept Sundays closed, and then the only thing I added was the deliveries, to be more specific. Because the car repair business, it is not a car that's for sale because it will be a registered vehicle. Registered vehicles aren't going to be for sale. So that's why I put that language.
But they're unregistered vehicles that are there on the lot now.
No, I know that. Right, because it's a repair facility and that's what he's doing.
Yeah. So the other thing is that the building commissioner said that it would be impossible to enforce this emergency car-only deliveries. So either you go by the hours of operation or you allow deliveries at any time. There's no way to
See,
differentiate.
right, that what I'm trying to do is again, put up a guardrail and have some enforcement ability and basically have the owner be responsible. So if they're getting deliveries every single day, how do you justify that? I was trying to give the board a mechanism to be able to enforce this, or the zoning enforcement officer, giving him a mechanism, because you can't have breakdowns every single day. You wouldn't be able to justify it. Not in sleepy Southborough, you know, maybe you can
Well,
if you're closer to
yeah.
the city, but not here. It seems like a reasonable way to look at this. So I hate to, again, throw out the bathwater and then the baby's still sitting in it, so to speak.
Yeah, so I'm not comfortable with the emergency
I don't know how to
delivery for,
change it.
I would just remove it. And maybe put a condition if, you know, there are no complaints for 6 months after, maybe we can put that back in, but, and I'm one of 5. But the building commissioner was very specific that that was unenforceable. And we have to give him some,
You put so many restrictions on this, and I'm back to the same place, which is that we have a site plan that doesn't work, and then we don't get anything done. So I'm just concerned. Right now, they could deliver vehicles at any hour, and you're backing them down. And we've heard complaints about when they have delivered vehicles, and I don't think if we tie it back to the noise ordinance, then I think we've covered ourselves. Whereas from your perspective, you're not giving me that option at all, and I'm trying to restrict what vehicles can be delivered at what time. It will not be vehicles for sale. They will be vehicles that are emergencies and breakdowns, which then implies it should be less frequent, and it can be done during the hours that's in the noise ordinance. That's what I think I can agree to. And if you don't go there, then I don't have any latitude to make a decision for the owner that could diminish his property value.
I think I'd like to hear from the abutters.
Could I just add one thing?
Sure.
So I noticed maybe there should be a condition, the number of cars allowed on site. Because one of the other things is they do park in the spaces there, but then there's also parking in the lane and then parking where the gas tanks, the gas dispensers used to be. So you're having not only your regular parking that was from the 2015, but they're parking beyond those spaces. And I worry that, and this is just my opinion, that it would be exasperated, is that the right word? Whatever, it would be even more if they close off Woodland, because now you have a dead end there and cars would tend to stack up or whatever. If they have such good business, you know, where could they put the cars? And then the other thing I thought is why wouldn't it be feasible to put fencing, the white vinyl 6-foot tall fence along where the red cedars are proposed, and then also along Corderville, that would close up the driveway and allow you to have an entrance and an exit on Corderville. And just my opinion, just food for thought, that additional fencing would do a lot to shield lighting in both directions. It would constrain the site a little bit. They would have to move slower, and you'd have to ensure that there's access between the fence and the front of the building and turning ability into the spaces. But if you closed up the driveway, which right now is open on Corderville, it's one long driveway opening, contain that, and then, a fence that doesn't look what abutters have expressed as could look like a junkyard later, if it's wood and not maintained. That's just my food for thought. So there was a question on conditioning the number of cars allowed on site, not just the
I
parking
think
space.
there's 19 spaces on site, so
Yeah.
that's what would be allowed. And then as far as a fence along Woodland Road, though, that we've suggested that we could do that. I gave you that option.
Right,
I wanted it
right.
to be something more robust than the white fence because I'm concerned that it probably would break, particularly in the wintertime with snow removal efforts by the town, not anyone else. It wouldn't be us, it would be the town.
And I just say white vinyl fence, so because the abutters had indicated in their emails they were concerned with that wood fence and what it looked like. But again, it's just my opinion.
And then as far as putting a fence on Corderville, though, that there's no ability to do that. There's only so much width. You don't have the ability to pass vehicles. We said that. I think it's exactly like 20 feet. It's that.
Yeah, unless you reduce the number of parking spaces. Right, I think that's another avenue, that if there were less parking spaces on site, not super amenable to the property owner, but that would be another way to gain room on site, is to reduce what you're putting on the site. Just an idea. If it works, it may not be economically feasible for somebody, but just another perspective.
Yes, sir.
Hi, David Ferris. I live in town and been going by this location for probably the better part of 50 years. And I wanted
Your address, sir?
52 Sears. I wanted to give some perspective to the planning board about being a small business owner. I've never met this guy. I sat behind him months and months ago, and he, barely had a belt to pull up his jeans as I looked at him from behind. And he looked just like a real regular working guy who was trying to get his business going in this location. And at some point, I think we as town residents and as the agents that represent our public policy and government have to realize who we're dealing with. We're dealing with a very small business owner with limited funding. And I know Peter's rates and similar civil planners, and I've watched him come here multiple times. I have nothing to do with this project other than being a resident driving by it to the train station once a week. And what I would say and offer some perspective is, at some point, we have to have some personal accountability. When we buy our home next to a former gas station on a very busy road that has loud trucks going up and down it every night, we have to be fair to the businesses that were part of this community before many people moved or bought their homes next to that business. And I'm completely for following the rules. I think I've heard regularly sitting in enough of these board meetings that we got to go by the rules, Mr. Ferris. It's the rules. What I haven't seen in multiple meetings is a fair set of rules that have been given to this guy that he's got to follow, and then handing it off to the other agencies within the community that are responsible for enforcement. And I think if you reverse this and you think about being a small business owner and the costs that are involved that this guy's going to take on to change his site to make it a little more conforming from a 40, 50, 60-year-old business in town, at some point you have to say to these neighbors, you've got to grow a backbone and say, guys, you bought next to this location. You didn't buy in Deerfoot Road. You didn't buy in Schuyler. You bought right next to this location. We've minimized your inconvenience as much as we can. You have civil remedies. I think a planning board's job and role holistically is to figure out big things that change our community, like the MBTA stuff. And I think if you roll back the tape and you think about 2 meetings ago when I said, stress testing, that's a really good idea because what? We don't listen to civil planners. I'm trying to give the same big picture advice here, which is I feel like the resident sitting in a schoolyard watching people beat up on a small working class guy. And from my perspective as a resident, it makes me very uncomfortable. I feel very strongly that Mr. Bemis charges an hourly rate. If anyone on this board were paying it, they would expect and demand of town government a fair set of rules that the guy could operate his business. So just my hope tonight, being a resident of the community, is that we treat people the way we want to be treated. So if we're a small business coming before a town regulatory body seeking specific guidance on how to open our business with a compliant oriented mindset, we give the applicant the opportunity to follow the rules. If the applicant doesn't, we have other branches within our government that deal with that. And if the residents really want to put their money where their mouth is, and they feel like they're not getting what they need from their other branches of government, they have civil remedies. But I can almost guarantee you, they're not going to spend the money that this applicant's spending to just get a simple permit for a couple of bay garage that's been there for 80 years. We've got to put this in perspective because this planning board's got a lot of big things it can do in the community. This isn't one of them. Talking about the light and all that, I get it. You want to make it conforming the best you can. But at some point, you got to say enough's enough, and you got to give the working guy an opportunity to compete in the community and be a part of the community. That's my 2 cents.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Linda Sloan. I live behind the gas station there. And I bought my house 37 years ago and
What's your address, Miss Sloan?
What?
Your address?
200 Woodland Road.
Thank you.
And I knew there was a business there and I didn't mind it. And I still don't mind them having a business there. The problem is the last business, RZND, in this business does not follow the rules and regulations that you give them. The last meeting we had here 2 weeks ago, they were still open after hours till 10:30 at night, 8:30. They do not close. And that's my biggest complaint, is about their hours of operation following the rules and regulations. I do not mind a business there at all. And yes, RZND is still involved over there, the last business, because he drops cars off there every day. And I feel that that's his overflow place, but that's none of my business. But I think that's what's going on with the sold cars and stuff. But,
If you don't mind,
if
it-
they, excuse me?
if you don't mind me asking, what do you think of the hours Monday through Friday, 8 to 6 and Saturday, 8 to 4? So you're okay with those?
Yeah, just abide, they couldn't even abide by them for the 2 weeks from the last meet until now. They're not gonna.
Well, so this permit hasn't been issued yet. So right now there, it's kind of the wild, wild west.
Right. But the last business that was there, RZND, that was their hours, they didn't abide by it. 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 10:30. And I feel that, I'll give them a chance. I don't have a problem with it. Just abide by the rules and regulations that you give them. That's all.
Thank you.
Hi,
Hello.
Laura Engelvon, 198 Woodland Road. I would say I agree with Linda. I mean, I think the hours need to be reasonable. What I'm concerned about is hearing Mr. Bemis talk about open for business, meaning servicing customers versus being at the property in general. The other night, they were there servicing vehicles until 10:30 at night. Maybe no customers were there, maybe customers were there, who knows? I don't think it's reasonable for us to expect that a business operating in the middle of a residential neighborhood would be there at 2 o'clock in the morning repairing vehicles. Just because they don't have customers there doesn't mean it's not affecting us or impacting us. And I guess I'd just like to say, I mean, it's really easy to talk about what's going on in our neighborhood living on Sears Road. But if you want to talk about the working people, those are the people who live in Portable who are affected by this. So we're all working people trying to work things out. We would have loved to buy a house on Sears Road, but we're in Portable. So, thanks.
just a caveat, I think that wasn't there conditioning on the, when the lights can be on? Right?
Yeah.
Were there hours restricted to the lights being on?
No.
We should just check that.
It was a half an hour after.
Yeah, half hour after close. And then there's the motion detector.
Okay, so it was based on the close, when the business is open or not. Okay, I just wanted to remind you.
So the neighbors who are here, those hours of operation are okay with you? So we have two things to decide, fence, trees, and the emergency vehicle drop-off. Well, is there any further comment on either of those things?
So my comment is probably go back to the fence, just based on what Case had instructed us. And then I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Bemis that it's best to have like guardrails in place versus nothing at all. So I'm comfortable with the emergency vehicle 7 to 9 PM and they're willing to make the change. So I have no challenges with that.
And that's Monday through Saturday? Not on Sundays?
Yep, just not on Sundays.
I'm happy with that too, but I really feel strongly that we should put some language in there that if it becomes a nuisance, that it goes over to the Board of Health. So maybe a certain number of police complaints or something like that, because to what Mr. Ferris is saying, we don't have enforcement on this because that's issues that we discussed. So the neighbors won't have any recourse but to go to the police. So I think that somebody should be looking at any complaints, and I don't know whether that can be written into a condition. I don't know.
So aren't the police the enforcement arm of the noise bylaw?
So, I mean, maybe in 6 months, we can take a look at the number of complaints or something like that, some sort of language to be written in that if there are, some number of complaint, I don't know what that number would be, but
And then do what? I'm asking.
then maybe it gets referred to the Board of Health because they have other powers.
So I understand the concern, but I don't think that's within our jurisdiction. Either monitoring the complaints or suggesting Board of Health involved in a minor site plan application. So I just don't see that that's our purview.
Okay, I thought that we had just clarification that any condition can be put on this as if it was a major site plan. So it's not limited by the fact that it's minor. Is that correct?
I'm not sure any is, if I said any,
Okay.
I don't want to say any because that's a very open term. Something like that I would have to check with town council, but I think there is concern with conditioning something like telling the select board that they have to send it back to planning if they don't do X, Y, Z. You can't, it's not really appropriate.
Right.
That's there's like a gray area there.
So, and I know the Board of Health is aware of this project because and I just forgot his title. He's been out to the site and he's the one that recommended the oil.
Oh, Dennis
So-
Costello is
Yeah.
the Board of Health.
So they have, the plans did go to the Board of Health and they have commented. Ms. Braccio?
So, hours of operation, just so I'm clear and the neighbors are clear while they're here. What exactly does that mean? Does that mean at 10 o'clock at night, there's going to be people still there working with lights on? Or does hour of operations mean as close to 6 o'clock as possible? They're done for the day and they call it a day. And I think The difference for me on this site is you've got the oldest part of town and you've got homes directly across the street that are like right on the street. That's just the way that Corderville was built. So I don't want to go to bed and have lights still on, flashing potentially in my window. So I just want to be clear before I support this, that the hour of operations are the hour of operations. That at 2 o'clock in the morning or 10:30 at night, there's not going to be people still there working in the bays and the cars coming in and out and the doors going up and down. I mean, I'm fine with these hours of operation, but I just want to be clear if someone on the board can clarify for me your interpretation of hours of operation. Is it 10 o'clock at night, or is it as close to 6 o'clock? Because there's always things that happen. You're in the middle of something. Now it's 6:30, but you got to finish up, and you do, and that's fine. And I think the neighbors are amenable to that. But I would not expect to see 10 o'clock at night repeatedly happening. Okay. The drop off 7 to 9, I'm fine with that as well.
So can you clarify hours of operation?
Well, So again, I didn't see cars moving on the site. I thought that if a car was inside the garage and the garage door was closed and they needed to finish something, they could stay later, but they shouldn't be there at 10 at night. I'm not going to justify that.
Okay.
But I could see them going past this, and that's why I didn't really want to go 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., for example, just to cover those time periods. And understand that when I put the hours down the first time, it was because the car dealership, that was going to be the time that they would be open for business to have a customer come in to purchase a car. The repair side of it's a little different. In a way, again, I don't want a customer to come there. They can't. That's what the hours of operation are restricted to do, or are intended to restrict their ability to come and go. But if the garage is shut and they're inside and they're wrapping something up, I just don't see where that's going to be a burden on the neighborhood. As long as they're
Well-
not making it a loud.
Well, noise, yeah.
Right, no, as long as they're not making any noise. I think the noise would kick in at 9 o'clock though. So I'm not even suggesting they should be there at 9 o'clock either. So that's all I'm saying is that there should be, I don't want to have sat here and someone say, Peter Bemis said they wouldn't be in that building at that time.
We're
That doesn't
coming, we're
work.
coming for you, Peter.
Right, but that doesn't work for me. I'm not gonna stick my neck out like that, because I know in my business, I have to go home at 6. I'm sometimes there at 10, sometimes back at 4 in the morning. And if someone was to prevent me from going to my office, and I'm in a non-conforming, I'm a pre-existing non-conforming site as well, that would be a real total burden. So I'm trying to be rational with how I've approached this whole site. And I really have tried very hard to put up those serious steel guardrails here. They are real. And I keep having to remind the neighbors, they don't exist today. And so they haven't violated anything. They may have done some things that don't look good. It hasn't made my life easy here. But at the same time, they haven't done anything wrong yet. I don't believe they have intentionally done anything wrong yet. And I want to give them a chance, try to do it right.
Okay. Do you have anything else, Mr. Stein?
Only that I'm in agreement with the board as far as the hours of operation. 8 to 6 Monday to Friday, 8 to 4 on Saturdays, and emergency delivery of vehicles in need of repair. 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Saturday. No business of any kind being conducted on Sundays. Thanks.
In a fence instead of trees?
No, I'm in agreement with the consensus on the board on that.
Building
Go
commissioner.
with the fence. Yeah. Thank you.
So we're not going to do the cedars. You want to go with the fence? It's your call. Please just don't, it can't be vinyl. I'm just saying it's going to get damaged. I don't want to be responsible for the repair. The town wants to be responsible for the repair of the fence. I'm fine with that. I don't think you should burden the town though either. Because it's going to come from that side. You know what I'm saying? There won't be damage on our site side. It will be damage from the road side.
Mimi, are there other trees that we could have put in there? I know the neighbors expressed an interest at our last meeting of not having a fence and preferring trees. Laura, do you want to come up and, do you mind, Mimi? If she just
No.
speaks to this for a second, would you mind, Laura? Again, I just want to make sure that before we close this out, that, we understand your point of view as well, as far as fence versus trees.
Yeah, I mean, we would prefer trees. I think Linda and I are both in agreement on that. We'd prefer trees. If it is a fence, I wouldn't want it to be a stockade fence. Obviously, a wood fence requires a lot of maintenance to make sure, it stays in good condition. So if it was a fence, that's why we would prefer a vinyl fence. It'll look nicer for much longer than a wood fence.
So that's the last question. I vote tree.
I read the building inspector's comments. I didn't really understand where he was coming from. I mean, they do grow, they do have a good growth habit. They will have to be maintained. When they get to a certain height, they'll have to be cut because they will get too big. So, you know, I was torn with what we picked for trees. I mean, I personally would rather see trees and the picket fence. I would go back to that scenario, but nobody else liked that. 'Cause I'd rather see the trees. Trees will look better, I think, long term.
Okay,
I'd rather go back to the sugars and
Yeah.
the picket. If I had
Okay.
to pick.
Could I just add the utility lines over on Woodland side where the trees are going to be planted if they get,
I know they cross in through there. I'm not sure where they are, but they won't be burdened. I mean, we're gonna have to keep them below that level.
so my only question would be if they go with the trees that we just expand that condition a little bit just to say that they'll maintain to not interfere with the utility lines unless the utility companies do that
Right.
under their management plan.
The eastern red cedar is a hardier tree. It
Right.
Is salt tolerant.
Salt
That's why
tolerant.
they put them along highways.
Yep.
So that's the one thing that I can say. If we're gonna pick something, that's probably the one to pick.
Yeah, this is David Ferris again at 52. I just wanted to add one quick follow-up comment that I maybe didn't make as clear as I could have at the last time I spoke, which is I do agree with the neighbors from the perspective of they have a right to quiet enjoyment of their property during non-business hours. And I think this board sets the rules of the road in terms of what those business hours are. And I think this board has plenty of connections and influence with the rest of the groups within the community that can be a solid enforcement tool. I would just add from listening to the last speaker that having built a lot of stuff and seen it over the years and the time and maintenance and whatnot, I think I would go a different direction than what's being discussed, which is I would do a hybrid. I would do like a vinyl fence that has some permanency to it, complemented with, on the neighbor's side, at least some nice arborvitaes or something that kind of breaks it up a little bit, only because you know, these things on, you know, the last thing this place is gonna probably be doing is watering trees on the weekends. And so eventually those, if they don't take root, where you're gonna have upset neighbors again. And so getting some sort of, you know, for lack of a better term, permanency for the neighbors might alleviate a lot of concern. And I do think, you know, having a discussion with the applicant offline about the importance of following the rules in our community and making sure the applicant who's received this permit has a face-to-face with our enforcement officer, Casey, who I think is a really thoughtful guy, could go a long way to preventing a lot of very upset neighbors. And so I think as part of this potential approval, when and if it comes, that extra step might avoid a lot of very upset neighbors. Just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think that we can condition that the landscaping shall be maintained. And I think there is something already in there and trees replaced if they die.
There was a condition number 8, landscaping shall be in conformance with the landscaping plans as submitted by the applicant and approved by the plan, except as otherwise provided in these, such landscaping shall be maintained, repaired, or replaced by the owner as needed to maintain compliance with such plans. And I think we just have to make sure all board members are talking about the same hours, because I think, Marnie, you mentioned till 10 PM on one, and then Jesse said 9, so.
Yeah, sorry, the original said 10, but then we changed it to 9 PM to reflect the
Okay,
noise
good, as
ordinance,
long as
so
we're
I'm
aware.
on board with that.
Okay.
Yes.
The wires are on the other side.
Okay, so the utilities are across the street.
That's what I thought. I didn't think they were gonna be. When we originally did the Maples, I checked that out.
Okay, so we ready for a motion?
So it's a discussion. Is it like, what do we need? Just Jesse want to do this?
Back to
Uh,
you, Jesse.
So, Karina, where do we stand on the condition? I mean, is the vote now to approve the site plan subject to the conditions? Do we need to revisit all of those at this point, or?
No, I think I need to clarify the additions that I've handwritten in here from the last two meetings. We also need to grant the waivers. The planning board needs to vote on the waivers that are outlined in the draft decision.
Okay,
Those have
one
not
moment,
changed.
please. Got it.
So there are
Need to get to it.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6 waivers.
Can I ask a process question, Mimi?
Sure.
So where in the decision does the discussion we just had regarding no fence and going back to trees, does that get incorporated within the
It will
decision
be-
itself?
It will be in the motion that you vote to approve as discussed this evening, confirming that it will be trees as based on the red cedar tree planting plan, the submission number 3.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
The site plans are complete with the exception of the hours. That's the only thing
correct.
that does-
You'll have to correct because the hours,
Change that.
yeah, the hours on the plans need to be fixed. And which Peter represented on the rear of his letter this evening.
We'll change it.
Yeah, we'll have to change that to update, but it'll be specifically when you go to read the motion, we'll just make sure we define those hours in the decision here when I read to you the changes we made on the condition.
So am I making motions on each waiver or on all of them at this point? Do we want to take it one at a time, Mimi, or
That's up to me.
batch them? Okay,
I think we can do them all at once as listed in the conditions.
yep, so moved.
Do I have a
Second.
second? Did you second?
Yes, I seconded.
Oh, so I have a motion and a second. Any discussion to approve the waivers? All in favor, Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
Brascio, yes.
And
So are you going to read the additional
Yes,
condition?
I'd like the opportunity to get it on record so that we have it in the minutes. So the draft decision, starting with condition number 6, stated that the hours of operation shall be limited to Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Looking here, Saturday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and Sunday closed for business. Deliveries to the site shall only, well, I have to fix that one. Hold on a second. Deliveries to the site, and we're not going to differentiate between registered and cars for sale. It's just going to be deliveries to the site will be Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. and no deliveries on Sundays. Okay, that will take care of conditions 6 and 7, because that one was the hours of operation and the other one was the time for
So
delivery.
just to clarify, that's not breakdown or emergency, it's any delivery?
That's what we concluded. with.
Okay,
Now, I'm going to try to stress that cars for sale are done during business.
Okay, then, condition number 8 was the landscaping that I just read previously, that such landscaping shall be maintained and repaired or replaced by the owner to maintain compliance with such plans. I don't think the height or cutting them is an issue if the utility lines are on the other side of the street, so we don't have to add anything there. we were going to add a condition to restore the paving on site because it was witnessed that there were, the surface had, deteriorated.
Where it's deteriorated, I just don't want to pave the whole site.
No, but the
Those are-
potholes should be
Wherever it's deteriorated.
deteriorated. Okay, where, so I'll say to restore paving on site where deteriorated. Okay, then, we have a condition here that will be added that says, ingress and egress specifically to meet the ZBA. So we're gonna confirm that, into the site on Corderville will be, we talked about this today. So if you're on Corderville and you're heading north, you enter from the north on Corderville and you exit, no, you enter from the southern side and you exit the northern driveway on Corderville. So you're,
Continue going, if you're heading north, you continue going north. If you're heading south, you continue heading south. That's exactly the way it was in the ZBA.
is the board in agreement with that? So you don't turn on the street.
There's no U-turn.
All right, so if you head north, if you're heading north, you continue north. If you're heading south on Corderville, you continue south. You go in and out on Corderville in that direction. No, and no discharge, discharging cars in front of the building on the west side. There was a comment on that last time. Discharge cars in front of building west side. No, that's where you would unload the cars. The cars would have to be unloaded between Corderville Road and the front of the building. Not pulling into the parking area towards Woodland. They would have to bring the delivery car, the tow truck or whatever.
That was heading towards the neighbors. That was the whole
Yeah.
point, Not having their headlights. in the open area.
Okay, so, discharge car, so, yeah, so deliver the cars in front of the building on the west side. Right? So you pull in, he unloads and he pulls out. But he can't pull in and then offload into a space. They'll have to like push it over or whatever they do.
Agreed.
Okay. No balloons, streamers, or barriers, or banners on the parked vehicles for sale. No
Agreed.
additional signage there. There was no condition for the number of cars allowed on site. There's a number of parking spaces which they're required to use. Yes, we could add that. So, number of cars allowed on site not to exceed 19.
And they just, obviously, if there's a vehicle there offloading, I just don't want someone to say,
Yeah,
actively,
that's,
to just, yeah, there's 19 parking spaces. There shouldn't be more than 19 cars parked on the site. There's a car in transition because the vehicle brought it in, dropped it off. I'm just saying, yeah, I think it's fine.
yeah, you have your spaces there. Let me just make sure I'm not missing anything. Yeah. Sorry, I believe that's it. Peter, did I miss anything?
Karina, Madam Chair, can we reference the noise bylaw or, I think there's a standard statement that we usually put in major site plan that says the site must comply with all applicable laws and regulation. I didn't see it in this version.
Condition number 1, all restrictions and conditions from other boards and commissions required pursuant to other permits commenced ongoing related to the site and project shall be complied with. The project shall be constructed in conformance with the approved plans and submittals. Except for waivers granted, the applicant shall comply with all provisions of the general bylaws, zoning bylaws, and all of the rules and regulations and policies applicable thereto. The applicant shall pay all fees of the town of Southwell imposed generally for construction projects and for the purpose of monitoring compliance of the construction and occupancy of the project in accordance with site plan approval as applicable unless expressly waived. So the only question is, on this, yeah, and, there won't, typically with this kind of site work, just as-built are required at the end. There is typically not been a requirement to have, the engineering consultant on site during the planting of the trees, in a minor site plan where, the site changes are minimal. So if the board agrees with that, otherwise we'll have to add, an inspection or two for, that they can anticipate having Fuss and O'Neill view the site, but I don't, these are all very visual. There's no drainage changes there. Yeah. Okay, just want to make sure that it's clear. Does that answer your question, Debbie? Okay.
Karina, you're amending the 212 draft, or was there a later draft?
No, there's only been one draft.
So that, condition 10, did we remove that, which was the vinyl panel fence?
Thank you for bringing that up. It's in blue. It's hard to see here. So there was condition 10, the existing 6-foot-high white vinyl panel fence located on the north side of the property shall be repaired where there are missing panels. I think that should stay in.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
It may have already been repaired, but if it fails, they need to maintain that, which is understood in the approval because the fence is part of the site plan approval. So I'm not sure you could answer if it was repaired. I thought
I
I
think
looked.
there's one panel still missing.
Okay, so we'll leave that in there and make sure. Kind of goes along with the paving to be repaired. Okay. I think, the minor site plan approval shall be recorded at the registry of deeds with the set of plans attached as an exhibit. We found that to be very helpful for historic purposes. The existing limit of 2 car sales spaces on the site was established. This is condition 16. By 1982 ZBA special permit, site work must be completed and inspected by the town or the town's engineering consultant for compliance with the approved plans, and the site shall be in compliance with this decision of minor site plan and associated approved plans prior to operating or exercising any increase in car sales or use beyond the existing limit of 2 car sales spaces. So there, you no longer have 2 car sales spaces there right now because it's by a business. The business has to get the license, right? So that decision should say, car sales spaces on the site. You strike the first sentence and it should say, site work must be completed and inspected by the town or the town's engineering consultant, which they would have to do for the as-built review. With the approved plans, and the site shall be in compliance with this decision of minor site plan approval and associated approved site plans prior to operating car sales. So that is something we could tie, that the site plan, it's like an occupancy permit. You shouldn't be allowed to do your car sales there until they make sure the site is prepared for car sales, which is what part of this site plan is for, change of use and of expansion to car
I
sales.
understand. The only thing I'm concerned about is being able to maybe apply to the Board of Selectmen, because again, we have a 9/16 or 9/13 date with which to perfect our ZBA decision. And I have to get all that work done in between as well, and, planting. So that would be the only thing I'd be concerned about. But I think we can fit it in. I mean, that's obviously the intent. But if you follow me, I want to be able to apply to the zoning board, excuse me, to the Board of Select Board. We have to apply to the Select Board so that we can get our license. Because in order to have the ZBA, maybe I'm reading into it too deeply, because once I think the site plan's completed, but your site plan wouldn't be completed until I get the as-built. That's how you're writing that.
Right, so the
Yeah.
ZBA permit made it contingent upon site plan. And the site plan has to be complete, not just designed, because it may never be built.
Right.
And then you'll have your car sales license.
Okay.
So I think that condition, it'll strike the first sentence of number 16 and start with site work must be completed and inspected by the towns. So that's,
Use the word
April.
substantially complete. just in case it's something and I'm just anticipating it. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, you can drive a bus through? I'm not trying to drive a bus. I'm just trying to think of what, we have,
So-
we have to get the gas and oil separator and we have to plant the trees. We have to stripe, fix some things.
But does the select board require
I'm not sure how. it
a
works.
completed, I don't think, because I think that the RNZ was before the select board asking for a license before they even applied for the site plan.
Could be. Could be.
And they gave them,
They did.
they gave them 90 days.
Right. That's all I'm looking to do is try to find a way to bridge a gap if we have a gap. It won't be for lack of trying. It's just if something was to come up.
Yeah, so I don't think that they'll,
All right. Well, we made note of it tonight. If we have to talk about it again, we can. Thank you.
Okay, so on this last condition, second to last condition 17, where it requires the as-bills to be prepared and reviewed by the town consultant, which is typical. As-built shall be reviewed by the town's engineering consultant for compliance with the approved plans and for acceptance by the planning board prior to operating or exercising any increase in car sales use. So they don't have that two car sales license anymore, so any car sales use. Once accepted by the planning board, the final as-built plan shall be provided to the planning. And then the last condition was a license to buy, sell, exchange, or assemble secondhand motor vehicles or parts thereof. Class 2 license from the select board is required prior to the car sales operations at the site. That's just to confirm, codify that. So I think that's it. Thank you for reminding me of the other conditions. I was so focused on the others.
I think we're good. Mr. Stein, do you want to make a motion?
Yes. So the motion is to approve the decision of minor site plan for 264 Corderville Road, expansion of use of car sales with conditions updated this evening.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes?
Brascio, yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Peter.
So I just have to caveat that you need to provide me an updated site plan reflecting the hours of operation and anything else that I don't think anything else was going to change on that. And then we'll update the decision and Mimi will review it and sign it to make sure it conforms to what we discussed with tonight. And then you need to get me 2 copies of the plan for planning board endorsement.
Your next meeting. I'll have.
Yeah, or as soon as you can, right? Because it's been approved.
Thank you.
And thank you to the neighbors for
Thank you,
being
Peter.
taking such an
Thank you.
active role in this process.
The next item on the agenda is a public hearing, special permit, amend 174-9 to include an expiration for special permits as required by Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 9.
If there's anybody in the attendees from from the ZBA in the Zoom waiting room, just raise your hand and we can upgrade you to panelist. So this public hearing for amendment to chapter 174-9 to include an expiration date for special permits is continued from the February 26th meeting. planning board meeting. We don't have any additional input. We haven't received any concerns or comments. It's printed in the warrant, with the one change that it said, a one-year extension may be granted as opposed to shall be granted. Pretty simple. And I believe it's warrant article 36. No, somewhere in there, but it's in the 30s. Okay. All right, so it's 37 maybe.
Thank you. Thank you, Karina.
You're welcome.
Mr. Stein.
Yeah, so the motion is to continue the public hearing for ZBA amend
Well,
one seven
I
four
was looking for
9.
comments first.
My apologies to my fellow board.
I know you want to move
with-
things along.
I withdraw the motion. I have no comments at this time.
Ms. Houlihan.
I was on the Mr. Stein train, no comments.
Mr. Maria,
I have no comments. Thanks.
Ms. Braccio,
No comments, thank you.
anyone in the audience?
John Bartolini, 4 Wyeth Circle. Same comment as last time. I really don't think it should be one extension. And I was hoping that maybe the planning board would have more appreciation for this now that you're looking for an extension from the state and you know what it feels like to be up against it. So I just think it does absolutely no harm to have it, you know, they may give an extension. They don't have to. So this way here, they give one, they can give two, but they don't have to give any. So I think it makes more sense.
I'm concerned that Mass General Law doesn't speak to an extension of a special permit at all. It says it lapses in 3 years unless there's good
What
cause.
they're reading is, they're saying 2 years, and then they said it shall give a 1 year.
Right, that's what I'm
Well,
talking about.
the way it's printed, it says one extension.
Right.
Want to get rid of the one and say, you know, you can give none or give as many as you want. Depends on the application, and I think it's better for the ZBA.
Yeah, I understand your point. And this is a ZBA article that
is.
we're just hearing, and I don't see anyone from ZBA
I
here.
just thought maybe you'd get on my side.
But so my concern is that Mass General Law doesn't speak to extending a special permit beyond its either 2 or 3 years at all. So I think this is being,
Doesn't mean it can't happen. Doesn't mean that it's.
so I think this is generous, is what I'm saying. More generous than Mass General Law.
We currently have 20 attendees and no hands raised.
Mr. Stein.
So the motion is, before I make the motion, just a point of clarity. The agenda, I'm going to request, this is a little bit out of order, that we cancel Monday, the 18th meeting. But we'll get to that later. In terms of extending this public hearing, because I don't think this was going to be on that agenda anyway, I'm extending this to the 23rd. Is that correct, Karina?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion is
Oh,
to extend.
wait a minute. Yeah, that's true. Is
Yeah,
that our next meeting? Is
our-
it 23rd?
Yeah, the next meeting will
Right
be the
before town meeting?
pre-AT.
Pre-town meeting,
Pre-town
yeah.
meeting at 9 a.m.
Okay, so the motion is to extend the public hearing for the ZBA to amend 174-9 special permit term to March 23rd, pre-town meeting, 9 a.m.
Second.
9 a.m.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
Brashear, yes.
The next item on the agenda is a public hearing downtown district. Public hearing to amend zoning code chapter 174 to include the downtown district and use regulation, sign bylaw, outdoor illumination, landscaping, and where that may be appropriate.
So again, with this one, as people may have seen and heard from prior public hearing meetings for this agenda item, the downtown district is proposed bylaw amendment is for basically housekeeping in the zoning bylaw where when originally the downtown district was added to the zoning code, there were minor areas where it needed to be also addressed as far as like signs and lighting, et cetera, to go along with the business village district. This public hearing opened on January 29th, was continued to February 12th, February 26th. We have not received any additional input or questions to this date. I believe it's warrant article number 36. So the downtown district, amend town code zoning downtown is article 36 on the warrant that's going to print. And again, the special permit that we just discussed for the ZBA, the lapse period, is article 37 in the warrant that's going to print, just for reference. So article 36. So that brings us to tonight.
Any comment, Mr. Stein?
So just one quick question. Colleen, would you mind just confirming that the iteration of the PowerPoint that is in our Dropbox this evening, that is what was given to Vanessa and what will be in the deck at town meeting?
So while Colleen's looking, Jesse, I'll explain. The final presentation is due this Friday, the 15th. to the
Ah, I thought it was already due.
No.
Okay.
So
I'm
if
a
there's any
little bit
last
ahead.
minute changes, and I just want to bring, when we'll get to the other topic, just make sure that if you have an article number listed in your presentation,
I changed.
that's all updated.
Okay, the iteration of this PowerPoint that we
Mhm.
have in the Dropbox tonight is good. So, unless any other board members disagree, I think we would move forward with that deck for town meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Houlihan.
The one in Dropbox says Article 31. You just said it was warrant number 37.
Yeah, because they changed it all around. So
Oh.
originally, when they were looking at originally when they were looking at all the articles to put in place, it was 31. We were 30, 31, and 32.
So so it needs to be updated.
It's not the most updated in the Dropbox.
Oh, it's not? I
Mm-mm.
changed it today
Oh,
when I saw that.
okay.
I'll get the.
Yeah, it just,
Good catch. Thank you, Marnie.
yep. No comment.
Mr. Murray.
No, I have no comments.
Ms. Brascio?
No comments, thank you.
Anyone here in the hall? Anyone on Zoom have a question or comment on?
18 attendees, no hands raised in the Zoom room.
Mr. Stein?
So the motion is to continue the public hearing for the downtown district code fixes to March 23rd at 9:05 a.m.
Second.
I have a motion and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demira, yes.
Brascio, yes.
Next item on the agenda is a public hearing, MBTA Communities Multifamily Zoning, Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 3A, Multifamily Zoning by Right.
Would you like me to give a brief update? Okay. Okay, so, since the last public hearing on this, which was, March 4th, where the planning board held a Zoom-only meeting to discuss, the MBTA Communities Overlay Districts, we received, an email from Mr. Bob Heavy, who owns 2 Woodland, 84 Turnpike and 88 Turnpike, with his input as to why his property should be considered as part of the overlay district. Marnie and I did meet with Mr. Heavy to hear his ideas and get his input and to get better acclimated to his property and what he was proposing there. In addition, at the last public hearing, the planning board voted to withdraw the warrant article for this town meeting. We did post with the town clerk a notice of vote, letting them know that the planning board withdrew from the warrant article, from the warrant, that article, just for official purposes. And then we did notify all the town departments, town council, town clerk as well in an email, so they would be aware of that. In the interim, we did receive some revised layouts for the area within a half a mile of the train station from Bowler Engineering very recently. So the planning board hasn't had probably an opportunity to review those because they basically just came in with some ideas about different parcels and building heights, et cetera, and reduction to the underlying minimum lot sizes. We also received just get through this. I'll do that last. We received comments from Conservation Agent Melissa Danza regarding some of the properties, one being Mr. Heavy's, and possible comments that the commission had related to his property, that there was interest in some of the area on Woodland for protection. Then we also received one last thing here. Oh, so one of the things to discuss tonight is that the select board is having a meeting on March 19th, which it was brought up that perhaps the planning board would attend that meeting to discuss the MBTA communities, where we're at and where we want to go forward. Whether it's a letter to the state requesting extension and exemption because of the historic significance of that area near the train station. And, you know, we would need to have the town in collaboration as one team uniting if we send a letter to the state. And that's where we're at. A lot of changes, new information, and a lot of old information is still good too.
The select board had initially requested a joint hearing for us to present the bylaw. And after our last meeting, I reached out to them and said it may be helpful to still have a joint meeting to discuss where we go from here. My initial thinking is that we had a consultant that was paid for by the state guiding us through this process, and they misinterpreted the compliance model and led us astray basically for several months. So I think there's a case to be made that the state has some culpability here, and that we could request at the very least a extension to the 12/31/2024 date, and perhaps a relaxing of the unit capacity in that half-mile area, since that's a very difficult area to produce 150 units. So first, is the board in agreement for a joint meeting on the 19th, and what do people's schedules look like?
Just also, I think at the last meeting, it was mentioned that for Southborough, because the station's at the town line, that the town really only has half of the radius. Whereas if the station was somewhere central to the town, you'd have the full 50 acres to maneuver and manipulate. So
Yes.
We are canceling the 18th meeting, which is the MBTA solely focused public hearing meeting.
That was going to be an issue in the planner's report.
I believe so.
Okay.
Is that, Mr. Stein, are you okay with that?
Yes,
How about a joint meeting on the 19th?
I will not be available.
Okay.
I
Oh.
can be available.
Ms. Braccio, Mr. Maria?
I am available.
I am too.
Okay. And I think this is not this agenda item, but on that day also is the review and perhaps approval of the National Grid's Vegetation Management Plan. Okay.
Which will be coming into your hands shortly.
I think it's in our inbox, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you got an email on it,
Yeah.
but we'll give you a
It's not a
hard.
complete application yet,
Oh,
but that's what we had.
okay.
This is the National Grid Vegetation Management Plan. There's no application. It's the plan. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Alright. Okay.
So any further comment or discussion, Mr. Stein?
So, Mimi, I sure am in agreement with your comments that the state is culpable for the confusion and the misunderstanding regarding the unit capacity minimums within Area 1. In my review of the materials that are available to us now, without having heard from our consultant, if anything, and I really mean if anything, because I don't know where this is going to go next, I would be more inclined to expand the area within Area 1 rather than try to change the underlying zoning. I think that would be, and this is very preliminary, we're talking about, some town meeting that hasn't been scheduled yet in the form of special. So I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself, but since we're having this public hearing and this discussion, why not? The point of this at this point is to look to get something done, assuming we don't get the extension by the end of the year. So I guess that's it for now. I think I don't think it's contradictory to, in parallel seek the mitigation from the state in terms of an extension, or what would be better, and the path of least resistance really is to relax the minimum, as you stated, Mimi. I think that's that's it for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Houlihan?
So is this open to not only commenting on what your proposal is around your letter, but broadly around this public hearing? Okay, perfect. So, so first, I would agree with that, but I would want to expand that. I just want to go back to Karina's update. I feel like Mr. Bartolini and Mr. Ferris both put their property up for MBTA, so I wanted to make sure we include that as potential options. And I do think we now kind of need to blow it all up because, as we know, it was a Jenga game and really trying to figure out what worked. And that was assuming Area 1 was accurate. Over the weekend, I forwarded the planning board, the Mass Historic Society, that basically showed entire Corderville section is Mass Historical designation, like the entire half acre. So I do believe that we have to appeal to the Attorney General to say that this is unprecedented. Like, this entire thing is in the Mass Historical Register. It should not even be included in the requirements for Southborough. So that's where I would like to push the letter, as well as getting an extension, and really think about all the properties that have been offered up to us by developers and owners of properties. And the final comment that I would have to say is what was proposed by Bowler I do think they should be aware that this is a historic site too. As Lisa said, she was going through the paper, it was an old jail, like there's a house that was a jail, like there's some really historic significance there that's recognized by the state. And to put any overlay zoning on it would seem to be, completely contradictory to have it designated as a mass historical designation. And I think my final point is that given that it will be important to almost think about what is the next steps forward from our planning board to work with Bowler. The plans they provided was significant underlying zoning changes. From stories, height, to size of property, to setbacks. And I just don't think that's even viable. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Maria.
I think during our hearing last week, Mr. Stein asked Zach from Bowler to provide us something, if I'm not mistaken, like what actually happened. Because you remember I asked, like, well, what happened? And we got 20 minutes of something. And here we are a week later, and there's some points that just aren't clear to me. Like, for example, did they not understand their own model? Did they develop that model? Did they make that table that they didn't read correctly? Like, there's just some like fine detail that I think I didn't really get out of our conversation last week. But I think that we asked them to provide something in writing, didn't we? In the commentary? And if not, maybe we
I don't
should.
think so. I think Mr. Stein asked him to clarify because.
Just clarify.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
don't think.
If I may,
Sure.
Mimi, so one of the things that I really wanted was, I mean, at some point, as we go forward, for them to come back, he did explain to my satisfaction what happened in terms of the misunderstanding of the model and what those percentages were referring to. What I'm not clear on is where we go from here, and a true scrubbing, if you will, of their entire, analysis to ensure we don't have any other. That's really, my main point was this
Thanks.
was bad. Let's not have something else pop up.
So I did have one question. As the engineering firm for the state, was this their own model that they didn't interpret correctly?
It's a state compliance model
Yeah.
that they were trained on and recommended. This was one of the engineering firms that was recommended by the state to help municipalities comply with this.
Yeah.
I think, the state's moving at warp speed and we're, we were out front. And as I've said before, the rapid transit communities went first, and most of them had multifamily housing zones that they just tweaked to fix, with the exception of Milton, which, did not pass theirs, but most of the others did. And so we're the first of the more suburban areas that don't necessarily already have these zones in place. And, there's already issues. And I think if you read the compliance, that, unit capacity within the half mile conflicts with what other things in the compliance guidelines say.
Well, and I appreciate that. I am very much in support of writing a letter. I can think of a few other things to put in that letter as well. Because anyway, I'll put that to the side. But I am happy to hear Ms. Houlihan's point that we should kind of blow the whole thing up, because as the hearing has, continued and will continue for a number of months, we are hearing from others that we are maybe not exactly in step with the spirit of MBTA communities and building additional housing, and I hope more affordable housing. So those are a couple of pieces that I would like to kind of visit in our journey over the next few months, especially the affordability part.
Ms. Braccio.
Thank you. I want to first thank Marnie for sending this out. I know you touched on it, but I really want to touch on this. This is something that should be on the town website. This is something that truly should appall us all, to be mandated by the state to take the most historic district in town and basically create an opportunity to destroy it. And it makes me sick to my stomach, and it makes me sicker to my stomach to see the proposer from Bowler with, you know, again, the most historic, affordable homes, the most dense area in Southborough, suddenly potentially changing the minimum lot area to 10,000 square feet is just, doesn't work for me. So Jesse, I think you're right on. If we have to continue down this path for Southville, you know, we're gonna have to look to expand, because it's just unacceptable, the thought of, you know, again, the most historic district in town, the jail again, that I just want to touch on that. I found that one of the most interesting things to know there was a jail in Southville. I think going to the state and asking for the waiver, I think we have more than enough grounds to do this. And I also understand we need to continue to move ahead, because we aren't going to get an answer quick. And by the time we get an answer that potentially could be no, we need to be in a place to have, you know, something else done. So I just think I agree completely with what everyone has said, and you know, hopefully we can find some solution. But I would ask that this document from Marnie be forwarded to the select board. I think they should have this before any discussion with us. And I think it should be put on the website. And I think that the residents should have the opportunity to see this, because it was eye-opening at the least. Thank you.
I just want to point out, I think one of the neighbors, Ann, had provided this to us as well, and I totally agree. I mean, yeah, we should all read it.
I just wanted to clarify one thing about us not complying with the spirit of the, so this statute is completely, the expectation is that these zones are on already built properties. In fact, in the compliance, it says that they don't want vacant lots. They want, you know, neighborhood, multifamily zones. So the expectation is that, you know, overlays will be on areas that are already built and not vacant areas, just to clarify that. And I think we have done our best to be within, you know, follow the spirit.
Can I clarify that? I mean, I agree. I think maybe the sentiment I was trying to describe from what I have taken from the public was that we need more housing. And, you know, the plan that we came up with, I think that we were all happy with. We voted for it. But, you know, as the hearings are ongoing, we're also hearing some other options by some of the developers, maybe put it that way. And I'm open to that.
Yes, sir.
Hi, this is David Ferris again at 52 Sears. I was just going to say quickly that I feel, you know, I zoomed in on the last hearing. I was at the hearing before when we were kind of gearing up towards this MBTA zoning. And I do feel like our planning board holistically got caught in a bear trap that was not set or known by any planning board member. And it was very obvious to me that a lot of diligence and time went into it. And that was sort of thoroughly covered in the last meeting. I do feel like, you know, we're at a point now as a community where we might want to adjust how we're approaching, and I think everybody sounds like they're open to it, solving this issue going forward. And I just wanted to share some collective experience, you know, running 3 companies that, you know, one of them, which is involved in real estate, we typically assign what we would call an owner's rep to a complicated and project that has a lot of moving parts. And the owner's rep is really the voice to the rest of the senior leadership committee that's making the decision. And so as you kind of think about the issues on this topic, I would encourage one planning board member to be sort of the taskmaster that is the liaison that's digging the deepest on this. Because I think, you know, the piece of advice I gave, not this last meeting, but the meeting before, and I really think I would strongly encourage you to think this way, is civil engineers are all about planning and feet and square area ratio, and lawyers are all about interpreting compliance with the law. And I think like what you really had at the last meeting was Bowler raising her hand and said, hey, guys, you did a great job, but we were moving really fast and we kind of got it halfway done. And that's a pretty big mistake on their part, not yours. I want to be very clear about that. I wouldn't have, if I was sitting on a planning board, I don't think I would have caught it because it's just a very integral kind of square foot ratio based on height and how many units can be applied there. And I think knowing that, I think if you had what I consider owner's rep or taskmaster on your board that was the specific go-to person, they could take some of the feedback and they could probably interact a lot quicker with the third-party consultants that you're going to need to get this right. And now you're in a position where you have to get it right. I recognize and I agree with a lot of what the planning board members have said about the specialness within our community, the fact that it sits on an outlier section of town, it's abutting a historic district. There's a lot of good reasons. Here's there's good news and bad news. That's true, and the state may decide on a lark to help us. Probably not, and we should plan as if they won't. And I really feel strongly that a peer review well before that town meeting, you know, and making sure that there's complete compliance, not only on a civil engineer, and I said this before, Bowler's a tenant. I respect them. I use them for business, and they have some really bright-minded people, and they're very, very good firm. But I think that this is an area that not only requires civil engineering experience, it requires an interpretation and then a stress test that is beyond the capability set of me. And I'm a real estate developer, so I don't know how each planning board member would do it. But I know if we assigned in our community one person to become our resident expert for our planning board, we're probably going to get a faster result. You know, if you want to go far, go alone. If you want to, or you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with someone else. So I think that kind of bears some thought in terms of how this gets approached from here forward. And I do think you're going to be facing the lesser of two evils. You're either going to open up the square footage and the property sets that are going to be included, or you're going to be going vertical. And that's just, it's one or the other. And I think quickly coming to some unanimity at the board level and deciding what direction you're going to go will give you the empowerment tools to go to the community owners of those the real estate that's most impacted and get direct guidance. Would you like your property? Because I think a lot of this is ignorance in terms of the individuals who are affected. You know, not in a mean way. I mean, they get up here and they really don't know, how is this going to affect my property? And in some cases, the property is going to become worth, 2-3 times what it was before. And if you said to them, you know, your parcel that's worth 500 now will probably be eligible for 6 units and worth $1.7 million, I think a lot of them say, oh yeah, I'd like mine included. It's just they don't understand that just yet. And I think that getting them up to speed quickly might get you what you want in terms of more areas that are inclusive of the zone. But I really would encourage, based on where we're at as a community now, because the dollars are big to the community in terms of the support from the state. And I think the state's going to really, and I think they're already showing you their hand, which is they want to make examples. They want to basically say, there's no outliers. Nobody's that special. I love all my kids equally. You're following the rules like everyone else. So I think that we should operate and conduct our board business as a community as if we have to be compliant, and we should absolutely have peer review. We should rely on civil engineers for civil engineer answers, and we should rely on Jay Tallerman, I think is a very skilled lawyer, you know, interfacing maybe with an outside expert that he can kind of taskmaster some of it. But if you had one person on your board that was working with Jay, and Jay was working with the state's premier expert that's helping other communities, you'd probably cut the line to success. And I think that's my 2 cents on the matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ferris. Of note, the state will, if you submit 90 days in advance, the state will, yeah. We didn't have 90 days.
There's a webinar going on Wednesday all about that from the MMLA. So what they
Any other comments? Anyone on Zoom have a comment on this?
No, 18 attendees, including Bowler Engineering, appears to be, they did indicate to me earlier today that they would be listening in to hear where the planning board is going and to get updated. I also think
Does this count as a meeting attendance on our
No.
contract?
I don't think so, but I also want to reiterate, because it did come up before, they did say that they would run a complete new model with mapping as required to make this work for us because of the discrepancy in what happened. So they have contacted us already a couple times last week saying, we'll meet with you when you need to. And we told them that after this meeting, we'd set up something to just touch base again to see where we're going. So we'll keep them updated. I think it's also important that Bowler be privy to the historical aspects and concerns of the town. So we'll be providing any of that information to them too, if Colleen hasn't already. Those two things. So they have been actively trying to, show that they are serious and want to make sure that Southborough is not further negatively impacted by this. Speaking for them somewhat.
Can I ask a process question?
Sure.
So if we're discussing MBTA communities with the select board, do we then need to extend the public hearing to that meeting? Or can we discuss it outside of the posted public hearing? Does that make sense?
Well, there are options. You can close the public hearing, knowing that we'll have to open a new one prior to a special town meeting or fall town meeting, special meeting. Or you can continue the public hearing to the select board meeting and discuss it.
So there's just a little bit of an issue on my end. If we leave the public hearing open to pre-town meeting for some reason, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get a Mullins because I'm going to be unavailable and away until like the 21st. So I guess theoretically, is it possible that we could not have the joint meeting with select board on the 19th be part of the public hearing, Karina?
I don't know. I'll have to ask town council or town clerk what the history is. We don't encounter this very often, so I want to just make sure. I'm looking up at the board because he just these pictures.
Okay, so, all right.
I just didn't want to create an issue where there
Yeah.
may or may not be one, that's all.
So
again,
Karina, I'll just need a Mullins. I'll need to like do a Mullins form, either either on the 22nd or at the 23rd.
So do we need to keep the hearing open, do you think? Do you think we need to keep the hearing open, Jesse?
I
Because
do
We don't have a
because
bylaw.
And we're gonna revamp all the
well,
stuff.
but so if we withdraw, if it's 100% withdrawn and not even in the warrant at all,
It's not,
then
it's not in the warrant.
I I'm not going to make the motion yet, but I think I would be moving at some point to close the public hearing.
Yeah, it's gonna be or it leaves it open that you can, I put in your packets there, all the voting stuff and the maps that we started out with, and the list of how many votes they got. We can revisit it all.
But that doesn't need to be in a hearing.
No, I'm suggesting closing it.
No, and you can continue as a discussion item as we started with.
Yes,
Keep working under forums or mapping sessions or public outreach.
yep, I agree.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be so formal.
Somewhere here's the warrant, just to.
Again, my intent was just not to create an issue that may or may not be there.
Oh, is
that's all.
this old?
Yeah, here I have I think I have the new one for you.
When it comes to public hearings, you can't be too careful.
So it's in the Dropbox, a copy of the warrant, if you want to just look, it's in the planner's report.
The warrant,
The warrant.
it's right here. I have it. Let me put it up.
Yeah, it was not. It's not.
What, it is, oh, it's not where?
In the warrant.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's not in the warrant.
Want me
I
to
thought
check?
you wanted to look at the warrant to see.
I
what
just wanted to confirm that. I thought it wasn't there. I just wanted to make absolute
I
sure.
spoke with Mark Purple the next day and Melanie, who does the actual drafting, and they both confirmed that the 17 pages were removed.
17 pages.
But I'm just gonna triple check because you have me second guessing now. Dropbox. I'm just gonna give a quick look here. Nope. Planners report.
Mr. Bartolini?
Yep, John Bartolini, 4 Wyeth Circle. The public hearing, I was going to ask this anyway, the public hearing is on Article 30, which on the first public hearing, you made a lot of changes to that. And then in the second public hearing, your engineer told you it was wrong. So you really don't have an Article 30, and as Marty said, we're going to blow it up. So there's no sense in keeping the public hearing open, because people like me can come. Specifically, the public hearing is to speak on Article 30. So if you close the public hearing and you continue to have your regular meetings, people like me can still come and put their,
No, we had it up.
you know, I appreciate Monty
The precinct.
asking me about our land, but they certainly want it in there, but there's no sense to keep the public hearing open. None whatsoever, because you already know this article is wrong, and you're not going to bring it before the town meeting. So, I mean, I guess if you want to keep Article 30 public hearing open until August, I suppose you could do it, but it doesn't make any sense.
I don't think we referenced Article 30 in the agenda or in the legal ad, because
No,
we didn't know yet, so we've been carrying the same name. We referenced it probably in the presentation.
handout I got for the public hearing was Article 30. This is the first one that you made changes for about 45.
Oh, you mean the bylaw?
The bylaw.
The written draft bylaw section referred,
Well, that's what the
Yeah.
hearing was about.
yeah. Yep, those were drafts.
So even if it doesn't mention it, that's what you were talking about, and that's what the substance was, so that's what it is. So the other question I have is, are you going to talk about this at the town meeting? Are you going to, is there a presentation or anything to say, hey, for your 250 constituents that are out there, there's probably more than what you've gotten so far? Are you going to say,
Yeah, I'll reach out to the moderator and see if we can give a report at the beginning.
I mean, I guess you don't have to, but
I think it would be helpful.
I think it would be too.
Education.
Because at this point here,
Put it on like that.
it's pretty confusing.
100%.
So it's, all right, that's all I need to say.
Thank you.
Just so you know that I did reach out to IT and give them a heads up that the planning board, depending on what you decided, would potentially be wanting to do a quick presentation at the beginning. And I also spoke with, another department head. I just can't remember who it was, but saying how, it would probably be important because if we don't address it, the public will say, well, what happened? Also be gone, and not everybody watches these public hearings, but town meetings, there's more audience.
Personally, I think it's also a way to get the people that come to town meeting to be aware that there's going to be more public hearings. And those are the people that are going to vote on it. So it's good to have them all in one room.
I'm happy to refine that presentation for that. I also think it would be good if we had our plan, much like we did in August, where we had a draft guidance of kind of these are the upcoming meetings. This is where we will intend to have those, whether they're regularly discussed meetings. Yeah, but I do think having a clear what will happen from here on, because I think we need to reevaluate everything. And I don't think we'll have an answer from the state. I think Mr. Ferris's points are spot on. We still need to have a plan.
Would it be beneficial for town meeting then to have some type of handout? I mean, there are going to be people there that have no idea what this is. So we actually have an opportunity. Would it make sense to put some type of handout, like you said, with some of the upcoming dates? And, again, the presentation that was put forth was pretty amazing. Yeah, I think it explained it really well. Is it worth it to potentially print that and have it at town meeting so people understand what's forthcoming?
Yes. Yes, we have funds to cover zoning amendment and specifically also for the MBTA communities. We have ARPA funds available still,
Okay.
and I do carry a budget item for zoning amendment articles.
Okay,
M-
so
Ms.
some
Houlihan?
iteration of it would make sense.
And would you like to give that report, Ms. Houlihan?
Well, sure. Thanks for volunteering me, Mrs. Latrell.
So just to be clear, Mimi, you're going to reach out to the moderator to make sure we have, I know that they're working on a meeting for motions soon. If they haven't, I don't think they've had that yet. I saw an email. You know, we have the meeting before town, the pre-town meeting. Yeah, that's what it's called.
Well, I think they allow entities to give a 5-minute report at the beginning of town meeting.
Karina, that pre-town meeting is Wednesday. Are you invited or we?
Yes, I think I forwarded an email
Yeah.
to the planning board members.
And I assume that refined presentation will also be due by Friday.
It is due.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll get it circulated so everyone can get it beforehand.
So Debbie, just because there's been a zillion emails coming through in front of my face, the pre-town meeting, motion meeting is this Wednesday.
Right.
And that's at
At 6 o'clock at the safety.
Senior Center.
Oh, I'm sorry. No,
I thought it was Senior Center too.
Mr. Litt, do you know? I know. I got it secondhand.
Okay, so do we want to close the public hearing?
So, Wednesdays are difficult for me to attend anything at night. So, unless Colleen is available, is there another member? You will go for the motion? Okay. Thanks, Marnie. I appreciate it.
Should I make the motion?
Please.
Yeah, so the motion is to close the public hearing for MBTA communities.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Miria, yes?
Brasher, yes.
So just to be clear, this will continue to be a discussion item, but this is just closing the hearing as a formality. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a discussion item, zoning map update.
We have good news.
So if we're done with the public hearings, I'm going to sign off at this point.
Okay, Mr. Stein.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a good
you.
night.
You too.
Jack, thank you for your input. Yep. Well. So in your packets, we have the half size, but I brought the full size here because it's much more representative and clean. I can put it on the desk, or you can pass it around. I also want to point out that generally moving forward, we used to rely a lot more heavily on the printed map on the wall, and we still do reference it. But now with technology, we'll be looking more at the PDF version of this, which will be on the website. And the actual hard copy gets filed with the town clerk, and he stamps it as received. The process is that the planning board has to give its blessing. I recommend a vote to accept. Then it gets filed with the town clerk, and it does not need to be recorded at the registry of deeds, according to town council. So if you look at this, and so just for the public's sake, we've been working on updating the zoning map from 2006, which was the last map that was created. And then in 2021, when the downtown district was added to one of the zoning districts, we had a small letter size draft that was used to identify the boundary, but it was never officially put on the GIS mapping or this. So in the interim, the firm that had previously been doing the GIS mapping was no longer available, and we have a new company, CAI Technologies, which has been assisting us and also the assessors department on updating the assessor maps. They're also the ones who helped develop this. So we found PDF files and some hard copies of the 2006 map. We gave that to them, and they created a draft. And the goal was to mimic the 2006 because that was what was produced, but we had no electronic files of that other than a PDF. So they used that, and then they incorporated the downtown district in red. The color's a little bit more vibrant to distinguish the zones. I went through this with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that the zone boundaries match the 2006 boundaries, and that whether a boundary was at the center of a roadway or along a property line, that it reflected the same zoning boundary. Because as you know, we do have some cross-country zone boundary lines that don't run along parcel lines. So where those happen, there's usually a call out for a dimension, whether it's 750, 250 feet. So it was important to keep all those lines accurate. Yes. So this took several iterations, I'm sorry. And that got us this map tonight. So in printing the final maps this morning, I noticed one last thing, but it's very minor, and I think that they'll be able to probably provide me an updated PDF tomorrow, because they also owe us some hard copies. But I said, let's wait till the planning board takes a look, see if they have any other thing they noticed. In the legend, there is a line type for the town line. If you scroll over to the bottom left, Colleen. Yeah. And it shows the town line is dashed. Well, initially, when they were creating this map, we had a dashed town line, that the perimeter of the town outline. It's not dashed anymore. It looked a little confusing, and it also didn't match the 2006 layout. It's not showing up over
No, I
there.
don't see it on the screen, so I have to pause it.
In any case, the line type is what has to be updated on this hard copy, and we'll get a PDF of that as well. Everything else, I've looked at probably 6 times detailed, street by street, at least. And you'll note that the street lines are up to the date in the bottom left, right corner here. Property lines are current to April 1st, 2022, because that's what we currently have in the assessor's mapping, which is what, and you're allowed to do that. You can have the streets updated and the zone, because that's what represents it's there, the lots and the streets. So here we are.
And it's beautiful. I'm just so happy that the Res A and Res B aren't like one shade off from each other. I could never figure out what was what on the other map.
Yeah.
They were so close. Yeah,
That
it looks
took some
good.
time back and forth, because they would send it and I would print it. And what it looks like on screen in a PDF and when it prints is different. It depends on what plotter you have, what monitor you have. So this looks like it would be effective, and it looks decent on the PDF as well.
Yes, thank you, Karina. Ms. Woolley.
Congratulations, Karina, for all this effort. I think it's huge. It's nice to have something that's not 2006.
Yeah.
So really appreciate the effort. I don't see anything. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Mr. Maria.
Yeah, really awesome, Karina. I was looking just quickly because I think it's a master plan goal that's been accomplished, but congratulations. Because it's very, very nice. Nice job.
Thanks.
Ms. Brashio.
I second and third, but it's already been said. Thank you, Karina.
You're welcome.
Mr. Lit.
Tim Woodland Road. I hate to be a stickler,
You're scaring me.
but it turns out that, quote, any change to a zoning map requires an action by town meeting and approval by the Attorney General. I just,
Yeah, this is already approved. So the 2006 map that we redid, this is a copy of that, was approved then. And then when we went to town meeting for the downtown district, the warrant article included updating the zoning map to include the downtown district.
This is the
We vetted that because I knew that might come up and it's confusing, but it was approved at town meeting.
I'll let the lawyers opine on it.
Sure.
But if it's a change to the map, which gets, which hasn't been sent at least through the Attorney General's office, I don't know how that works.
what was approved
I mean, it,
at town meeting, so you've already voted on it.
Yeah, so I did talk to Jay Talaman about this,
okay.
and he updated
Jay's
me
okay,
on the
I'm okay.
process. Yeah, and I can clarify, and if it needs to, the map itself needs to go to the Attorney General for some other reason, but it was already, the 2006 was already accepted. It's in the code and it states when it was accepted, and we reiterate it here on the plan that was, and you're allowed to add amendments to that as long as they're voted at town meeting. So the one thing we did notice is in the town code, when they updated the downtown district, they have to add a little footnote underneath where it says the 2006 zoning map was accepted under 174-4 zoning map, where it explains you can make small changes when a roadway or lot shifts or something like that. But the zoning districts for 2006 were accepted. If it does, I will check it again, and if there's any, I will,
I may be simple-minded. I'll forward you the reference and you can decide what to do.
okay, well, we'll let, town council tell me either way, but I think I think I vetted that. I could be wrong, there's always, that's all right. All right. But thank you for making me aware of that. We did consider that early on.
Karina, can I ask, is that going to be the model moving forward? Like, say, for example, MBTA district gets approved as an overlay. Would we then ask for approval from town meeting to update the map, but they won't see the map? We don't provide that, or we would provide the map,
No, and a map was provided for the downtown district.
right?
It just wasn't the whole map because we were only changing the downtown district.
Right.
So we,
But yeah, so, and it would be a hatched mark over the existing zoning.
So that's the model moving forward then. I think that the Attorney General does need to see updated maps. Otherwise, they'd be looking at an old map for years and years. But I don't know.
what
Right.
did they need?
I thought it needed to go to the Registry of Deeds and all that good
Well,
stuff.
no,
and
yeah.
Signed,
Yeah.
Yes.
notarized.
I will ask again, and if it needs to, then it will go there. But we did approve the map for the downtown district in 2021, and there was an excerpt of the map provided, and that was voted on, and that's what we've been using since then. And that map went to the Attorney General, that sketch of the change to the zoning map. The 2006 map, which existed long time ago, was already approved.
And there was one other thing, when Bowler was doing the maps, they have a package that they would give to us to send to the Attorney General, and it has all the shape files and all that, and then they do their thing. It does take quite a while to get the approval for that. It's all brand new.
So I make a motion to approve the new zoning map with the change noted to make the town line in the legend a solid line.
Is there a second?
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, Latrell, yes?
Houlihan, yes?
Muriel, yes?
Brasher, yes.
I will double check that. If it is an issue, I'll let you know, but I talked to several people already on it. And
We can opine all night.
Yeah. And I can speak a long, long.
The next item on the agenda is a discussion item, the residents at Park Central 40B. I don't think there's anything new on this, is there, Karina?
Nope, in the Dropbox is the current copy of the ZBA webpage that shows, that there's,
I think they're due back on April 4th, is it?
yeah. Yeah, they're not here. April 3rd, 7 PM to be determined, status of land court for Park Central public hearing scheduled for the 40B application. April 3rd. And it can be confirmed by going to the the zoning board of appeals webpage.
Any discussion or comment on this? Anybody here, 40? The next item on the agenda, 120 Turnpike Road, 40B.
So, quick update, I can tell you that as far as the, related modification to the major site plan and low impact development, I've received an application from Ferris Development, with that modification application, which, I reviewed. It looks in order. I will be filing that with the town clerk tomorrow and distributing to the planning board members for a public hearing opening on April 1st. So we'll get that to the paper Wednesday to have it published on the following Monday. And then the following Monday after that, and then the third Monday will be the public hearing opening. And it's requesting that, and they have a cover letter narrative, an existing site plan that was part of this approved major site plan approval when the parking garage and associated courtyard improvements were approved with that layout so that it identifies what that land area was in the back of the parcel, the 6.2 acres. And the goal is for them is to remove, to have that condition removed as reference to convey the 6.2 acre area in the back of the 120 Turnpike Road parcel. It's also stated in the findings, is a comment. I believe they're also meeting with ZBA admin tomorrow and the building commissioner to review pre-application to submit the same request for the ZBA. Because the ZBA also issued a special permit with that parking garage courtyard improvement project, which also referenced in the findings that the condition was to convey the property. And then they're right next to conservation, so Lara works also for Melissa Danza, and there may be implications where they have to go to the stormwater management permit, where if conditions referenced that parcel, that portion of the parcel.
So did the ZBA special permit, was that for parking garage and site improvements or just the parking garage?
I think it was for the parking garage.
So I think that may be different because they didn't do that. Whereas the site plan was for the parking garage and site improvements and
Yeah. and-
change in parking and remove walkways and put in a patio and those things they all did.
Yeah, and I just want to go to the reference here because I just can't remember. All right, currently I just have the major site plan approval, but I do have a copy of the ZBA permit I don't want to belabor it, but I think you're correct that it references, no, I'd rather just call it up real quick for you here. Give me 1 second. Site plan. 118, 120. Parking garage. Okay, so it was a special permit from the ZBA that was August 21st, 2019. And in it, it says, the application for the special permit is to allow the construction of a private parking garage to contain approximately 500 spaces as opposed to the allowed 3 cars or 1 truck in the Business Highway District and Residence A District. Relief was requested under section 174.85C10. And in there was a finding number, just get there, 10, that said Curo Southborough LLC, who was the owner at the time, will be gifting 6.2 acres of land to the Southborough Conservation Commission. After the donation, the lot at 118, 120 Turnpike Road will be a total of 14.2 acres. So it was specifically for the garage. Now, the plan, if they reference a plan, and then again, it says here the vote was to grant a special permit to allow the entity to construct a private parking garage to contain approximately 500 spaces opposed to the allowed 3 cars or 1 truck in a business highway. If the plan presented included the same plan that came to planning, then it would be inferred that it was also in front of the ZBA, but I don't know, I'd have to look at the plan. But as the actual decision was written, it seems it was for the parking, number of parking spaces.
We had also received a letter on February 8th in response to the planning board's letter on December 5th. That was to answer. So our letter to the zoning board on December 5th, and this was the proponent answering the issues that we raised. And I thought that we should respond to the zoning board on some of those issues.
Can I just also point out that we did receive, and I'm not sure because it came during the last meeting, we received from John Palmer, resident at 131 Parkerville Road, an email with a small presentation of 120 Turnpike Road 40B proposal in support of that, I believe, with the intent of that if they don't develop the 250 Turnpike 40B plan that's coming down the path. It was kind of a trade-off because it was in response to Attorney St. Andre's letter that was provided on February 26th with comments. So I just want to point that out, that Mr. Palmer did submit information and that was forwarded to everybody, I believe. Okay. And then we did receive a draft letter that Mimi started in response to the Ferris development letter.
And the stewardship letter, stewardship from Joyce.
Oh, yes.
Oh, I didn't get that. Did I get that?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Joyce Greenleaf, representing the Stewardship Committee, met on March 4th and discussed the proposed 40B development. We received a letter. And the stewardships voted to request that the planning board immediately take all necessary steps to facilitate the transfer of the 6.2 acres on the property to the Conservation Commission as legally required and recorded and executed site plan approvals.
Oh,
That was dated yesterday, the 10th.
did the planning board receive that? Were they copied on that, right? No.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Missed that one.
You didn't get that. It was only to the planning board members. It wasn't
Oh.
to the town
Ah.
planner. I didn't look at that, so we can forward it to you.
Because I scan them all. It's like, how could I miss? Can you forward that to me, Marty? Thank you very much. Okay, I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss that public input. Okay.
Marina, I just sent you the ZBA special permit. I think you just mentioned you didn't have it, and I happened to have a copy, the Curo 2019.
Yes,
I-
I found it and I was I
Oh,
don't have
you
the
had
applic,
it.
I might have had I read the decision, but you sent me the application, which is helpful.
Oh, I had the application.
Thank you.
I do have a question on procedure around that. When a gift is made to the town, what's the process? Who is supposed to, how's it supposed to happen? Like, so it didn't happen, but I believe it was in good faith, it should have happened. So, I mean, not necessarily moving forward yet, but just my own knowledge, there was a condition, right? It was in the condition, and then what should have happened next? Like, what piece of it didn't actually happen? Or did it happen?
It
Because
didn't, it should have been conveyed by deed to the Conservation Commission.
So that would have been something that the applicant should have taken it, should have done.
And just to be clear, it sounds like a politician, sorry. I shouldn't say that. Just to be clear. So it said that the condition which they're asking to have removed says prior to the initial expiration date of this major site plan approval, the southern 6.2 acres of the southern parcel, Assessor Map 37, Parcel 120-4, contiguous to Breakneck Hill Conservation Land, is to be donated to the Town of Southwell Conservation Commission in a deed transfer arrangement pursuant to MGL Chapter 40, Section 8C. So that section describes how it's supposed to be transferred. The transfer shall be subject to good marketable title as furnished by the grantor. If necessary, any defect cured by the owner, together with a Phase 1 verification that there are no hazardous wastes upon the parcel. And this decision also included a condition that said that all successors, this permit, these conditions apply to all successors.
Just hold a hand.
So I read the draft letter that you proposed, and I agree that we need to send a response. And I think it's very clear and it's pretty objective in its statements. So I was very comfortable with the draft.
Mr. Maria?
I agree.
Ms.
Right.
Brascio?
I as well.
Okay, so no changes, just send, because their next hearing is on the 27th, so I just wanted to make sure they knew where we were. And when I wrote this, I didn't know that they had submitted their plans, but they won't have been heard here by the 27th.
And that 27th meeting with the ZBA is the 40B application, but also the modification to the special permit from, is that the 2005 one? But there's a modification along with it. There are two public hearings at the same time for 120.
Yeah, it's to get together.
Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that, let me just real quick here. Because there's a lot of different Turnpike Road things happening here. So
Yes.
120 Turnpike comprehensive application. What does it say? I think it's,
I know the two were filed together.
at the same time. but
Although
they're
it
independent
was,
Public hearings.
I think they were kind of melded together, and was unclear what they were trying to modify. It looked like they were trying to create a lot.
Yeah. I'll tell you, one more place I can look quick here. Let me just look one more place. I'm gonna look at the agendas, the last one.
Karina's looking at that. Mimi, can I ask a process question?
Certainly.
So ZBA is planning to move forward with the discussion on the 40B at 120, even though council on January 17th basically told them that in order to move forward, the condition has to be waived by planning board.
Yes, so I think that they had, when they met, and I can't remember the exact date, they had that information, and so they pushed it out to the 27th. I guess hoping it would be resolved by then, but it's not, which is why I think it's important that we update the zoning board where we are.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood.
Okay, and so I do have clarity here. So I'm looking at the agenda from February 6th from the zoning board. And they had at 7 PM, 120 Turnpike Road, FD 120 Turnpike LLC comprehensive permit seeking the chapter 40B, which was filed November 1st of 2023. And then at 7 PM, they're also holding a public hearing at the same time. The petitioner is seeking a special permit to modify the 2005 special permit decision due to the proposed use of a shared driveway to serve the MGL's Chapter 40B comprehensive permit project on the southern parcel. So it's two separate public hearings. One's the 40B and one's the associated special permit that was granted on the 118, 120, because they want to use that as an easement across the driveway. Remember, with the no frontage. As opposed to a subdivision.
Mr. Lit,
Unless there's a shortcut with conservation that I'm not aware of. Ordinarily, acquiring or disposing of real estate requires action by town meeting. And so what I would have thought is that
there is a shortcut with Conservation Commission.
Mhm.
because normally things go through town meeting and then get assigned to the care and control of conservation. There may, like I say, there may be a shortcut, I don't know.
Yeah, when I sat on the board, there were town-owned parcels that we just put under the care and control of conservation. They're still town-owned parcels, they're just protected. That's what the care and control is.
Thought.
Yes.
The question is how can you make a donation that doesn't go through?
I think conservation, I'm not an expert, but I think that they can accept real property.
Yeah, and I believe, just to tag on to that, MGL Section 40, Chapter 40, Section 8C, Conservation Commission Establishment Powers and Duties. You might reference that one. I don't want to read it all here, but that's a good reference to, that was.
Yes, sir.
John Palmer, 131 Parkerville. Are you able to share what the feedback is to the ZBA on the donation of the land and that issue?
Are you talking about the draft we were just discussing?
Yeah,
That Mimi drafted in order to respond?
yeah, is that public record or what's the essence of that letter?
Can you share that, Colleen?
Mimi's draft.
Well, the first thing is that, as required by, Chapter 40B, regulations, if a subdivision is required, the proponent must submit a subdivision plan, and that can be, approved by the zoning board, but they need the plan. So there is no subdivision plan. And their attorney had said that, that the ZBA could subdivide the lot, which is, they can approve a plan, but they can't, take it upon themselves to subdivide the lot. We just clarified that. The next thing was what we were discussing, the 6.2 acres, that needs to be, that condition needs to be modified and mitigated before the 40B can move forward.
So with regard to that, we submitted a letter to the planning board and to the ZBA through John St. Andre. suggesting a land swap, I wanted to know where the planning board and the ZBA stood on, that proposal. It seems very reasonable that, all things considered, it's a way to pave the way on this 40B, while perhaps mitigating legal issues on the other.
I don't, so this board hasn't taken a position on it yet, but certainly that will be up for discussion on, when we open the hearing to modify the site plan on April 1st. And the proponent, I'm trying to remember what Ferris said about that.
At the last meeting, he said he wasn't interested in doing that.
Oh, okay.
So that's still ahead of us.
That is still ahead of us.
Thank you.
Okay, so here's the answer. The Conservation Commission can accept gifts of real property or interest in real property on behalf of the town, subject to approval of the Board of Selectmen. That's direct quote from 48C.
And that condition was reviewed by town council at the time, who made reference to that MGL to include it in that condition, to make sure that the process would be understood. I remember that.
So I guess I don't understand that, because if the selectmen then could supersede the conditions of a planning board vote by saying, no, we're not going to accept that land. So we have a site plan with conditions that can be observed by the select board? Am I understanding this correctly?
One
Is,
board
what if they say no? What if it goes to the select board and they say, no, we're not giving it to Concom? Then basically, what happens next? What's the process to move forward then?
Yeah, one board can't overturn another board. The way the selectmen, I believe, have to accept land because they're the executive officers of the town. I don't,
But again, what if they decide they don't want to accept the land and then the land can't be transferred, but I would think at the very least, it ties this whole process up until there's some formal decision. I just worry that that's not going to happen, knowing their position that they've already put out there on this project.
well, there's a whole process that they go through because the deeds have to be written up, fair market value and all that good stuff. And there's usually required a preservation restriction. I've never seen a gift. That's one
No,
thing.
I don't think,
Buying property is one thing.
so the Conservation Commission property under its care and control has Article 97 protection.
Okay,
So it wouldn't need a conservation restriction on.
well, why couldn't you put that in your decision that'll go to conservation under?
Well, so it's already in the decision from 2019. Yes, ma'am.
Freddie Gillespie, Chair of the Open Space Preservation Commission. And at our last meeting, and I haven't written the letter to you, but the commission voted that they wanted to see the existing permits adhered to. And my question is, I came in late because I was at another meeting, but I never heard of the select board needing to approve a planning board decision. But if it's true, you need to, find that out. But what happens when we vote on land to go when town meeting votes on land to come to the town? Does that also need select board to approve it after the fact?
To put under the care and control of conservation, it does take a well, let me take a step back. Once the land is owned by the town, the select board take the position to put it under the care and control. It's a formal vote to put it under the care and control of conservation. Now, I don't know if on past land, if town meeting can actually take that position in a warrant article. I don't know. If a warrant article goes to town meeting to accept land, can town meeting accept it under the care and control of conservation? I don't know.
You can ask Melissa.
It's more
So-
confusing.
Did I miss something that you're saying that to enforce this, it needs to have the select board's seal of approval?
Before it can go to conservation.
Can it come to the town? Or is that not, or is that not how it's written?
So I think we're getting too far ahead of
Okay,
ourselves
sorry.
here.
What it says is that for conservation to accept a gift in the name of the town, it can, provided the selectmen approve. Got nothing to do with the conditions that were established by the ZBA. ZBA just said, use this process. And I have no idea what happens, you know, in the bizarre case that the selectmen say no. Sure, it's full of appointment orders.
Our town council didn't seem concerned. He thought the condition was enforceable. All right. Anything else on this?
Will you be forwarding us that and we'll
Yes.
a formal draft for you and then we can give it a quick final review?
I think that I did send it to you, didn't I?
You did, but you're good with that and you did send it to us, you're right. We'll format it for me, for you and.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Just making sure.
Can I just say one final thing, Mimi? I think from Jay's email on January 17th, where he says a condition was inserted that the applicant to convey all or substantial portion of the property that comprises the 40B locus to the town for conservation purposes. So I think we can be clear that even if it goes to the town, it's for conservation purposes specifically and can't be potentially used otherwise.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda, Northborough Road, Chapter 61 parcels, town's right of first refusal.
Quick update that, the planning board's letter recommending that a bona fide offer be requested in response to the, letter of intent with the agreement to option, it wasn't actually called the P&S purchase, had another name, agreement option, something like that. So a letter was sent back by the select board, it appears a letter was sent back to the proponent who had the letter of intent to sell that asked for, a proposal that was bona fide and had all the, met all the things so that the town could opine if they were going to do a first right of refusal or not. How's that? Sorry. Okay, my head is spinning. I know what I'm saying, it just might not be coming out.
Thank you. So the clock kind of stops, but there's always the chance that the property owner says it was a bona fide offer. I don't know if the town will want to litigate that or not, but I think that if we're interested in this, we should be moving forward. And I don't think that the select board has reached out to any entities to discuss this.
Can I just share, Mimi, that
Sure.
at Shopsy's last meeting, they discussed this, they met the other night about this, and they've agreed to have a stakeholders meeting to bring everybody together And I think that's a positive first step. I know that their intent was open space recreation. They wanted to include planning board in those discussions as well. And obviously Shopsy and the Affordable Housing Trust. So just to make you aware that that is forthcoming.
Thank you.
Would we have a planning board representative? Since I have MBTA, I'm declining a voluntary.
Is there a volunteer?
Should we volunteer Jesse since she's on?
Yes,
And he's not here.
Oh, he's on Shops.
I would be happy if someone else wants to do it or, leave it up to the board.
Sold.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Freddie Gillespie, Chair of the Open Space Preservation Commission. At our last meeting, the Open Space Preservation Commission reviewed the properties, and both properties are on our high priority for preservation for wildlife habitat, the Audubon report, and we also are interested in working with other groups, Shopsy, recreation, but all the stakeholders, conservation. But the Open Space Preservation Commission would like to pursue preserving at least, we see a shared project could be potentially of high interest for the town, so it doesn't have to all be for open space, which we might take that position on a different property. But in this case, we see great potential. We specifically talked about affordable housing to create some meaningful affordable housing with an open space component, combining the two, and also getting input from all the stakeholders. You don't just, that's just what came to our mind. Certainly recreation and conservation and, anyone else who, and love to have planning board part of the conversation. So thank you.
Hi, Dave Johnson, 9 Jericho Hill Road. I am part of the property owners there, but I'm not here tonight speaking of that. I'm speaking on my behalf as a town resident, and out of the 24, 27 property owners, the only full-time resident in town. I would hope the town would find some use for it instead of what they're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave, for sticking around to the end of the meeting to say that. Very much appreciated.
So anything else on this? We look forward to Lisa working with the next item, planners report.
So, a few things to catch up on. I know Shopsy was going to, potentially, have a joint meeting on the March 18th meeting for MBTA communities. So we'll let her know that that meeting's been canceled and that it will be continued. Oh, no, that we closed the public hearing. Right. I laugh in hysteria. Okay.
But we'll continue to talk about it.
Yes.
We would love to have them if they would like it.
I missed what you said. It's a Shopsy meeting, joint meeting on the
I'm
18th?
sorry.
No, you said it. I just didn't catch it.
An agenda was posted for Shopsy to attend the planning board meeting on March 18th in order to attend a public hearing for MBTA communities. Since the planning board decided to cancel that this evening and they actually closed the public hearing for the zoning bylaw amendment, we'll let Dorian know that we'll continue discussions even though the public hearing's closed, but they're certainly welcome to attend
Oh, fantastic.
and encouraged.
I just want to add that I had as part of on the master plan implementation committee, we have affinity groups, and my group obviously is planning board, but also EDC and SHOPSI. So I kind of put my feelers out to talk to EDC and SHOPSI. I might be able to connect with Leah this week. But it would, my only point there is not, is really would be good to hear from both EDC and SHOPSI on both the mixed use part of this, MBTA communities and also the affordability. So I know that with like the speed that we were working previously, we had some of their members show up at the forums and that sort of thing, but it would be really good to hear from each of those committees as we move forward.
Which was the EDC and SHOPSI.
Yes.
And we'll try to move it up to the beginning of the agenda. I know Dorianne loves to stick around all night long to be the last person on the agenda. Try and move it up.
Okay. We got the go-ahead from Mark Purple to procure an on-call engineering consultant using the second method that I described instead of an open RFP advertised in the Central Register. Bill Cundiff, Melissa Danza, Lara Davis, and I will meet and select a handful of consultants in which to ask to submit a proposal. So that's good news.
And was there a planning board member that was going to work on that?
It was, you were
Or was it me?
kind of volunteered by default.
Oh, okay. Then let me know.
I will, and it will definitely require interviews, but we'll shortlist so that, and we'll have sample letters and things like that required, so we'll be able to vet them pretty good, so we're not wasting our time either, hopefully. Okay, Joe. Okay. We had something here. So, currently, the Conservation Commission and Planning Department is working with St. Mark's School for a runoff issue from the dormitory project. So there's been some water that's been coming off, and we don't know if it was from, and it went into the town system during a couple of really heavy storms months ago. And we don't know if the line silted up and now the capacity's less, or if the capacity as designed wasn't, if the storm was heavier than the 100-year storm or whatever. There's different options, but St. Mark's School is looking into it. And, Bill Cundiff has been assisting on the side with advice and guidance, but St. Mark's School is on it, and we're hoping to remedy that if it's a problem. So they're working on that. I think I also mentioned that the St. Mark's School parking lot project, that the catch basin that's installed there in the near St. Mark's Street is tied into this town system. So we're requesting that they provide a drainage easement for the town to have access to that, should they need to, since it's tied into the town. And that was spearheaded by Bill Cundiff, having reviewed the plans at the time. And prior to, we had a pre-construction meeting with them. As you can see, the work is already happening. Fuss and O'Neill is slated to come out at 2 times, which they've already coordinated when. And then we let them know that drainage easement would be required per the DPW. So that's moving along. Thought I had something else. Am I forgetting something? Just look at the agenda. ARPA funds, we're working on those. We'll be using more for the MBTA communities. Also, there was a talk about, the MBTA communities being added to the zoning map. Some of those funds can be used for that, but also there was a request to possibly have the GIS mapping, have the zones being able to be toggled on and off. So if you click it, it doesn't all turn on, all the zones turn on. You could just turn on the residential zone or the business highway or something. So I'm going to ask them, and we have some money to use because that's part of updating that information. So that's good. I'm still working on trying to find someone for the deed research database update. So that's still in the scene. The unauthorized scenic road tree removal that we were talking about, the resident had contacted me and Melanie, as the certified letter had directed them to. And we were under the impression that it would be a mitigated, scenic stone wall, tree removal application to determine, is there a fine, is there in lieu of type of situation. The other option that's come to our attention is that it could possibly be just under the select board's jurisdiction according to MGL for enforcement when a tree is illegally removed. The select board is the enforcing as the tree warden. Yes, yes. So there's a fine limit at all, but, and it may not have to be a public hearing, be a meeting at the select board. So select board as tree warden has to determine how they want to approach that and hopefully, work with the planning board.
So I asked the select board chair about that when I said, talking about the 19th, if we're going to have a joint meeting. In the past, to mitigate after the fact tree removals, we have had joint meetings to figure out the mitigation. There's only been one, it was the St. Mark's. But so the chair said that the planning board has no enforcement jurisdiction, which under Chapter 87, we don't, it's the tree warden. But I was just wondering if they wanted help moving this forward, but evidently they don't. And it's unclear what the next step is. He said he'd get back to me.
Okay. And I think I covered everything. We have 1 second.
Thanks, Karina. I make a motion to approve the February 12th, 2024 minutes.
I second.
I have one thing. On line 4, it's Monday, February 12th, not Tuesday. And that's all I got. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, Latrell, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
As amended?
Yes.
Demiria, yes.
Brasher, yes.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Any long discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor, Latrell, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
Brasher, yes.
Did you start recording?
Yeah, just closed down.